Call this meeting to order, the workshop for ISO report and National Fire Services. And I guess, Chief, you're going to be starting us off.
Yes, sir. As y'all know, every 5 years, Baker County, as well as every other municipality in the country, has to undergo a survey from the ISO organization that sets the standards for the insurance premiums when it comes to fire, homeowners insurance, and things of that nature. We just recently did ours for this 5-year window. And so what's going on tonight is, I know we discussed last year that y'all had requested, once this report was complete, that you wanted the report presented and to find out all the facts of our county, where we stand, where we have done good, where we need to have improvement, and that's where this is at. We hired a subject matter expert, Mr. Skip Starling, who has a nationwide company. He goes all over the country, small municipalities, big municipalities, and goes through and finds out what's good, what's bad, and helps us to get where we need to be. He showed us a lot of things that we didn't know in regards to how some of the information we already had, but we just had to find a different way to capture it and show it on paper, and those are the kind of things that it was good for him to show us that. We covered 3 main areas, and I don't want to get ahead of him, but what he's going to explain to you is there's 3 main areas that they look at, and one is the department itself, from everything from our procedures, our training, our documentation, all of our assets, equipment, manpower, and that's under that column. And there's another portion of this that goes into the municipal water system of the county, where there's fire hydrants, where there's not, where there's ponds and lakes, and our ability to move water and things of that nature. And the third part of the process to survey it goes with the 911 center, how we receive calls, take calls, dispatch it out to the units in the field, and things of that nature. So those are the 3 elements that go together to make the total score, and he'll give you a way better explanation to us. That's why we hired him. But it's that time. The only thing that was a drawback for us that was unfortunate is they've had a change in their reporting system, and even their the actual ISO inspector that came with the company didn't know his own company's change of policy. We finished the survey in September. He left with boxes full of all of our data to go and crunch it together and give us a report. I sent an email in October the next month to say, when can we expect to see this? And he said, normally it's about a 6-month window, and that's when you need to hear from us. So I marked the date, 6 months to the date, which was about the 3rd or 4th day of April. Sent the man an email and said, hey, we're getting close to time. It's 6 months. Where are we? And he immediately sent me back a reply that just said, well, I've discovered, or I've learned, that we no longer mail letters like we used to, that now we have a website and you can go to it and find it. I don't know why he didn't know that. So maybe he's a new survey representative. I don't know. So we went to their website and we found it. And when we found it, we discovered that they actually had completed the thing and erroneously emailed it to the courthouse way back in December of last year, and supposedly copied half the people that are in our leadership of our county, including the county manager and ourselves, and nobody's got copies of it. So we obviously reached back out to them and said, look, we need some answers here and whatever. So they're back looking at that. Why did I bring that point up to y'all? We feel like there was a couple of areas where they captured bad data on some of our training hours and things that we feel like that it was pretty obvious we had good records of our people, and they didn't show that they had good records. So the way this process works is, once you get this score, there is a window of time when you can contact them back and say, hey, these 2 or 3 areas, we think you had your data wrong. You can dispute that. They go back, and that's part of the normal process. So that's why we're doing it now versus why we weren't doing it back in January. It was because of that. They can't explain why they sent the report to the address for the county courthouse. They also can't explain why copies to everybody from people that sit in this room, people that sit in this building and whatever, nobody got the copy of it. But irregardless, it hasn't held us up that much, but that's the background on that. Beyond that, Mr. Starling came by this afternoon, gave us a few high points of what was going on, and he arrived just a little while ago, and so we followed him up here. And I told him the floor is his to kind of explain what's going on and what he's found, and the good and the bad, and go from there. So here we have
Thank
it.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are y'all?
How you doing?
Thank you for allowing us to speak here. Basically, what I want to do is I want to go and kind of start from the beginning, and I'll give you the page number so you can make it a little bit easier at finding the data on this report. This report is actually a community survey. It's about the 911 system. It's about your water systems. It's about the water that's available from alternate water. It's about the equipment the fire department has and how it's staffed and how it runs. And so it's really, I always try to explain to people, it's really more about the health of a community with their emergency services. That's what it's doing. And the insurance industry relates this then to how does it affect your insurance premiums. Now, there's going to be a certain point where we're going to switch over, and there's a gentleman from Outerbridge who is Travis Cook. He's in the insurance industry. And I thought it was important because I remember the last time we were here, there was a little bit of confusion on how much ISO actually affects everybody's insurance premiums. And he's going to explain to you that it affects everybody's. This PPC score from commercial to residential is regulated by that PPC score. And that was designed so all insurance companies play on a level playing field. So nobody can kind of outdo the other guy by being able to just start making up numbers of what we're going to give you rates for. There is a company called State Farm that does a thing called Subzone. I helped them design that. And they don't use the PPC score as in this number, but it's because I designed an algorithm that takes this number, converts it over to their 1 to 7. Every time your PPC score changes, State Farm's changes also. And so, because that causes a lot of confusion, because people think that, because State Farm will say, well, we don't use the PPC. That was because ISO and them got into this issue of like, if you're going to build your own system, then you can't tell people you're using our system. But we needed to be able to buy their data because they didn't want to have to send people out to inspect fire stations. And so they came up with this mutual decision that when their score changed on the PPC, so does the State Farm score. So, but that ties it, and this is across America. I mean, like tomorrow I'll be off to Whitefish, Montana, where I'll be doing it, and after that I'm off to Michigan, where I'm doing it, in Tawas, Michigan. And then, I'm constantly bouncing all over the United States doing this, and everybody's running the same program as you through the PPC program. Now, one thing I always try to bring up is like, why would the PPC program be important? All right, let's talk really quick. You have basically 3,900 homes in your county. Now, we're not talking about also mobile homes and other structures that are out there. We're not talking about barns and farms and all these other things. We're talking about people who live in their residence in the incorporated areas. Let's say that we reduced the insurance rates for them $1,000. Say all of a sudden, boom, theirs came down $1,000. You're talking about $4 million savings a year. Jacksonville figured this out very quickly. That's why they're the largest Class 1 in the United States. They figured out very quickly that they could save $258 million a year by funding a way to keep a good, healthy ISO rating. They save more money than their entire fire department costs annually to the public. So in all real and true reality, the fire department is at net zero because they're saving more than the entire fire department, even though the fire department's going to all these emergency calls and hazmat and all these other things that don't have anything to do with fire services. But this program, and you'll see when Travis talks about it, is a tremendous opportunity for council members, commissioners, district members, board members, to invest into a community to allow people to have better rates. That's what it is. And the better rate comes back to, money in your pocket. And it's a lot of money. It's not like small amounts. So, but anyway, let's talk about where we ended up with on this PPC score. If you can change this and go to page 7, we'll switch over that, and I'll make it a lot easier because there's a lot of fluff in here where they get embellished and talking about this is who we are and this is what we do and all that's great. But I know our time is limited, and so I'd rather get into the high points of talking where we are. In the past, in 2020, when you did it, you earned, if you notice on the bottom, there's a score, and it shows on the left-hand side, 53.53 at the very bottom. And in the past, you earned a 52.01. Now, this 53.53, we know is not accurate, because there were some issues that somehow the person who graded us did not dig deep enough into the files that were there. There were parts of our files that they admitted they had never even looked at. They didn't realize they were that deep. They didn't realize how thorough it was as far as how deep they had turned in their paperwork. And it had broken down to each individual person about every hour they do when they do their training, and where and when and all this. And they didn't really look at that. They looked at it just kind of lightly. They're working on that. They're fixing this now. So we wanted you to know. So your score is actually going to be higher than this, but because we found 3 or 4 different areas that had the same issues. The unique thing was there was 2 things that my goal right off the bat when we first started this project. Number 1 is you have 8 stations. You have less volunteers. Volunteerism across America has just changed drastically. The guys that were my age are now getting older, and they're not able to fill those gaps like they've had for the last 30 years. The younger generation that we expected, which had done in the past, would fill that in, isn't there. We're not seeing that. That same sense of service has changed drastically. And so now everybody's starting to lean more now into the career base only. And you'll see on this score, it actually shows that. So there was a point where we were actually worried, like there were 2 stations that we were worried, were we going to be able to keep them open? I mean, because they're closed all the time. There's one in Georgia right over here at Homerville, which is not too far from here, who Brian Kemp, who's the governor, has his hunting club across the way, and a brand new station sitting there, and it's closed because they don't have enough people now to be able to keep it open. And yet it's the governor's house across the way. So it shows you that they're not trying to pick on people, but they want to make sure that the fire department can truly fulfill the role that they're saying that they can do. Well, you had 8 stations, and we were worried about it with the manpower side. We were able to maintain the 8 stations, and that went well. We were very happy with that. You maintained, if you look at this top number right here, that 5 shows that you're kind of in the middle of the road. It's a good score from a residential side. 5s and 4s are the best a resident can hold. So that side was good. That 5Y, it talks next to it, that's a little different than what y'all had before. Before you had what's called a 5X. 5X meant that the tankers really played no role. They didn't really get the credit, the bang for the buck. It is interesting though, because on yours though, it says a 5Y. Well, the 5Y means that they're agreeing that a tanker will show up. If you have a structure fire, it's coming. There's no question about it. And that you're going to get a minimum of 6 people that are going to show up to the fire. They don't have any problem with that. They did not give us a full credit, though, on the tankers as if for a water shuttle. You'll see later when we get into it, our manpower scores were not strong enough to be able to support that. You have to be able to support that I can have an engine that goes right to the scene immediately. I need to have 3 tankers that go to the scene immediately. I need to have another engine that has to go to an alternate water source or to a fire hydrant to refill the tankers when they're depleted. And then you have to have a manager that's over this. So like all these things are happening all at one time, and there just weren't enough people. You had the equipment, you had the tools in the toolbox, but there just didn't turn out to be enough people. So they said, yes, we agree that you have tankers, and we will give you credit for your tankers. There's no problem in that. We didn't see the tankers in the past moving like they do now, but we see that, yes, we'll do that. We'll give you that credit. So that's why you see the 5/5Y. The 5Y means that you are deploying an engine and a tanker to every fire with a minimum of 6 people who show up at all times. And ISO agrees to that and says yes. Now, as we go down, we need to be able to talk about, we just said a minute ago about a 5 or a 4, let's say, that's for residential. 1, 2, and 3 are set aside for commercial. You'll see in a minute a gentleman who's going to talk, and I bet you one of the things he'll talk about, and I have not privied him to be able to speak. I wanted him to speak freely of whatever he wanted to on this. I did ask him to talk about, if you would please tell us from the insurance industry side. This is a gentleman that deals with, umpteen zillion dollar businesses all over the United States all the time, and he puts together these policies and knows what it takes to be able to get people an underwriter where you can get, you know what I mean, coverage. And that sets the pace on whether you get commercial growth in your community. That's critical, that you have to be able to have the right numbers to get people like that and to want them to come in and spend money with you. And I think you'll see that he's going to talk about that. I would highly recommend, and one of the things I would imagine he's going to talk about when the numbers, as time goes on, you really were set up to where you could have been a 3. But you're going to see when we got to the manpower side, you're running 20% of what you need. Now, I'll be honest with you, for a career department, I mean, and I do this for 32 years I've done this, and I do it all US. That is extremely harsh, but yet a reality. Your EMS and fire, the way you do it together, works extremely well because you're getting the better bang for the buck. That's why you're doing that. It was good theory, and it has worked, but call loads have changed drastically. We also have levels of residents that we don't have on records that are out there. How do we know it? Because call loads are going up and up and up. But yet you may not see those census numbers changing, but yet your call numbers show what's happening inside a community. And so you're getting to a point where ISO felt uncomfortable on the manpower side, saying that you really needed more manpower. But again, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I mean, across the board, I mean, in many ways, you did extremely well. And we'll hit each item in a minute. But there were certain items, I'll give you a classic, like in communication, where, you know, the sheriff has been given XYZ tools when he came in. And those XYZ tools, you know, 15 years ago, I'm sure were great. Well, 15 years ago, we were using handheld calculators. And now we use our flip phone, and I'm able to sit there and figure out pretty much any kind of mathematical formula I could ever think. Things have changed drastically on communications. And he got hit pretty hard on that. Like, if you look at this, let's look at the emergency communications. You see 414, where we're looking at the reporting capabilities as far as them, the calls coming in, they're reporting, no issue. So that means their side, like the work they're trying to do, no issue there. But then you go down below it, and it talks about the telecommunicators, how many people are working there, and they were way down. I mean, they were way behind. And then when you get to the dispatch circuits, same thing, we were behind. Some of that, when you see behind, when we talk about that, is not necessarily saying that you have half the staff you need, even though some of those numbers may be true, but it's saying that the capability of the CAD system is not up to speed to where it can show like certain dates and times and when this call came in and when it went out and all these things. That today is just kind of a normal. Matter of fact, in Florida, y'all went even a little farther. It's actually a law that says this system shall do this. And I think a lot of people are just realizing that there is that law that says that your system must meet this category level. So your communication, you ended up with 6.81. In the future, because I know the sheriff's working on things like that, you'll see that number come up a lot, and that'll be very helpful. Remember, when I came on, a lot of the stuff that we're doing now is into the new way that ISO is doing some of this stuff. So we're kind of helping people come along and bring it up to speed. But I can see when I heard from them and listened to them that there's no question they have the desire to do much better at this, but they've been held back by capability of technology mainly. So you see that they got, and you can look at this as a score. If 10 points is the maximum that shows you on the right, and they get a 6.81, that means the score they earned is 68%. So out of 100% score, it's 68%. Now, how does that relate to other places? And we can't really do apples and apples because of the sizes. If you look at Jacksonville, they're 10, they're 100%. You look at St. Johns County, they're 100%. You look at over, and these are all my clients. You look at Clay County, they're 100%. But their size of their community and the money that you have to put into 911 is a lot different. So it's taken y'all a little bit more time to get to where you want to be and need to be on that. But I think it's headed in the right direction. And I think the next time you do this, you'll see a good change there that will be very helpful to y'all. As we come down into the fire department side, if you look on the engine companies, out of 6 points that you could get for all of your engine companies, you got 5.62. That's a great score. So in other words, as far as how they were equipped, how they were managing things as far as their pump test records, hose tests. Now, there was a year that was missing, and that's what you're seeing that number come from. Because some of this, up until the last few years, it wasn't recorded because it was being done in a different method. And the way they're doing it today, they're able to keep up with these numbers exact. And this will be very helpful for you on your next one, because you'll probably do 6 out of 6 without any issue. The number down below it shows reserve pumper. This is something that's a little concerning to ISO and to me, is that if you notice we got 0 points on that, because we're supposed to have a second engine that's sitting there fully equipped, ready to go. So if one of ours goes down, you slide it right in, and it happens. You literally, if that was engine 81 over here before, now that engine that was our reserve, boom, slides right over, and now it's engine 81. So there's seamless loss. It's like your systematic of fire protection is always perfect. I always try to tell people, my wife and I, wasn't long ago, we were in Israel, and I had a chance to have a McDonald's hamburger. And it was so amazing to me that a Big Mac tasted just like there as it did here. Now, the Coca-Cola was horrible, but the Big Mac was great. And I tell people, could we ever become these people? Because they're so good at this replication that no matter where you go, you're getting this same taste, flavor, and that's how they want fire services to be. They want fire services to be, no matter what station it comes out of, they want the same capability out of every one of them. And by having a good reserve, that means that no matter what station it had to go to, station 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, boom, it just can fit right in there instantly. So that's something in the future that you may want to look at. You've got some engines that you've bought new in the last few years, which were wonderful, but you've also got some that won't be long, and it'll be time to change up, to upgrade, and that would be a perfect time to pull one of those over and make it a reserve. Just don't sell it, just turn it into a reserve, and then because you've taken the pressure off of it, it could last another 10 or 15 years the way it is. It's just under a heavy load, it wears them out pretty quickly. Your pumpage capability means how well can you, from all these different stations, meet the needed fire load. Your fire load was 2,000 gallons a minute set by ISO, and no problem. You got a perfect score on that. The ladder reserve service, you don't run a ladder truck, but you do carry things like jaws and all these things, so you got credit for that. But now, did you max out on that? No. And do most communities your size? No. They do just what you did. They carry service items on engines, and then that makes it to where you're carrying the essentials, like if there's a car accident, whatever, or you have to breach into a home, or whatever, you have what you need on the truck, and they do that. The reserve service, if you notice, you got some extra points at .07. That's just because there was more equipment carried on the trucks on a few items than was needed to meet the minimum. So what they do is we convert that over, and we get extra service points on it. I recommend to people that as far as having an extra service truck for a community your size, that doesn't really work out very well. You know what I mean? It's just not very cost effective. The deployment analysis, that's showing that as large as your area is, how much of this community, how many areas can have an engine within 1.5 miles or 2.5 miles and be protected adequately? Well, their answer is, for yours, it was about 40%. Now that number is actually going to go up a little bit, because there were some things that they didn't take out as far as like the state and some of these other federal, these type lands that should have been removed. So we're kind of working on that. That's another one of our projects. But when you look at the size of your community, it's still pretty realistic. I mean, you just have a large area you have to cover, and it is. And it's almost impossible that you could have an engine everywhere. I mean, so that some things are just, they're kind of non-negotiable. When you get down to the next one, you'll see credit for personnel as far as how many people show up. If you go to page, let me show you really quick. I think it's going to be on 13. Well, actually, it's going to be the 14, I guess. Let's see. Ladder service. Go to page 16. And this talks about how many people you have on duty, like how many people are on a duty cycle. and it's showing you got credit for 9. You got a little bit extra because you got a 9.48. That's indicative to what you're doing. You're getting a little bit extra because you have people that come in and maybe they're filling in, or because of fires or whatever, they're having to do some overtime while they're doing some of those because they've done a callback. And then you have on-call personnel. That's people that are not at the stations, but they respond to come in and help. But the problem that ISO is saying that it's just not enough. Ideally, if you look on this, on 3, just go literally like 3 paragraphs up, and it says the maximum credible response for on-duty and on-call firefighters is 12, and that's what most people hear. They hear the 12 and they stop, including officers for each existing engine company or ladder company. That's not 12 at a fire. So you're required, and this is where we're going to back up. I was looking a second ago. If you back up now to page, let's see, I think it is going to be 10 or 11. Yeah, go to page 11. You're required to have 8 engine companies. If you look on, or actually it's page 13, I'm sorry. Go to page 13. These numbers change, by the way, depending on where you are and how thick the document gets. Of course, it spins these numbers back and forth. But it says you have to have 8 engine companies because you have 8, departments that are accredited. You have to have 2 engine companies to support the basic fire load. That means that 2 engine companies must show up at all times. Now, there's no way that you can afford to have 12 plus 12, 24 people at a fire, because that's just not realistic. It's not indicative. But when you look at the entire community has 9 available, and then you have to share those resources out that they could be on EMS calls. And then you have to start taking away those EMS calls from now how many people have available on fire. Their numbers of what they're saying that you could use more staffing is accurate. It's absolutely accurate. You're running on a model that was built, that was in, it was a good model because it was designed to be able to provide services that were safe, but at the same time, you've outgrown that staffing model where you need more people. I mean, that's just the reality. I mean, and what would that mean if you got more people? A much better chance that people would have much better rates. As it is today, when we talk about this 5 and this, yours is an 8B now. It used to be a 5/9. Now you're a 5/8B. That's what the XY means, is 8B. So what it means is that you have people now that are 5 miles out away from the fire station that don't have any water near them, and they're going to see an improvement on their insurance. They have an opportunity to do that now. That 8B means that you now get credit that they've proven that you do carry trucks, you do carry tankers, you're more advanced than you were the last time. You got it more organized where you have more capability. That's why that improved. But the problem is that you could really improve if you had more manpower, because you could go to what's called a water shuttle, to where everybody gets a class 5. There would not be an 8B or a 9 or this other. You'd be for anybody within, if you go to Jacksonville, anyone within 5 road miles of any fire station is a 1, period. There is no secondary numbers like there used to be. We changed that out. It's just a 1. They actually have the best fire rating in the United States. Most people don't realize that. They have the largest and the best ISO rating in the entire United States. Out of all 179,000 fire departments, nobody beats them at their rate, period. And but they also deliver 3 tankers to every single fire. I mean, I don't care where if it's downtown, 3 tankers are going to show up. And it's because they just have this driven, we're going to provide the best we can, and that's how they're doing it. And you have the capability, you have the tools in the toolbox now to make that line up, but I can assure you that if you would put some resources into this manpower, it could do amazing things for y'all as far as from an ISO rating. Now, I'd like to call, if I can really quick, Don, can you call Travis? Travis Cook is a gentleman that I've worked with now for about a year. I don't work with him as far as business. I work with him because he is providing insurance coverage for, go ahead, sir, for an area called Fall Line, which is this gazillionaire's mansion place over in Taylor County, Georgia. And the average home value there is probably about $3.7 million. And he writes and underwrites for that. So as we changed their fire department, worked with them to change their ISO score, it became very evident that he started really paying more attention than he's ever done on how this ISO thing plays out. And he's learned so much. We actually invited him to come to our ISO inspection there in Taylor County. We had a chance to actually watch the inspection and see it from the internal workings. And so I'd asked him, would he participate with us today? And he graciously said that he would. Travis, this is Skip. How are you?
Skip, doing well. How are you?
Good, sir. Trying to get it where they'll be able to hear you. Talk to me one more time. Travis?
Skip, can you hear me?
It's not coming through the microphones for some reason. I guess what he's doing, you got turned up all the way. Can y'all hear what he's saying, or would you like me to try it in a different place? Travis, can you give us a basic rundown on I'm in an area that's called Baker County, Florida, and they have just gone through an ISO inspection. And we went from a non-tanker environment as far as credit-wise to where now we do have a tanker. We're an 8B on our second number, 5 on our first number. We've got some issues with ISO where they missed some score points they were supposed to give us. And so we think that first number is about to change again to go a little better. And they're working with us on that now, and they agree that there's some issues there. But I really wanted the commission to kind of hear it from an insurance person, from the inside, the inner workings. And with you with Outerbridge, I thought that would be a unique opportunity if you could kind of let them think your thoughts are on how worthy of an investment it is to invest in the ISO, them doing well at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to see where I can help. Just a quick introduction for everyone. Good afternoon. Travis Cook, managing member of Outerbridge Risk Advisors. We're an independent agency, so we work with a number of carriers on behalf of our clients, both commercial and personal, to help them find the best coverage, best rates. So I certainly spend a lot of my time getting into the weeds with insurance carriers about their rating methods, trying to get the best price and coverage for our clients. So with that being said, Skip, what specific questions could I answer and address?
I guess the thing that I get asked is like, do all the insurance agencies, are they all using the ISO product, the PPC score, as a benchmark as far as setting rates?
Yep. Well, just to begin, insurance agents work with insurance companies. Insurance companies, carriers are the ones who provide the policies. We negotiate on behalf of our clients with the carriers to get set policies. The short answer to your question is yes, it's a rating factor for every carrier that we work with and are familiar with. My agency works with over 50 carriers. So I haven't come across a carrier that doesn't have it as a rating factor.
What do you think as far as if they invested into the ISO rate more, how would it affect if they were trying to get more commercial growth?
It's a fairly considerable consideration on the commercial side. What you tend to have with commercial, depending on what you're trying to attract, is relatively sophisticated companies who will do their due diligence to determine where they should build. If they're RFPing multiple sites, one thing that they'll take into consideration is what would our expenses be for building in said county. Premium is a consideration there. Let me ask you really quickly, Skip, what's the second number that Baker County has currently?
They're an 8B. They're a 5Y, which is an 8B.
Okay.
They got credit for having their tankers. They got credit for delivering a tanker, and which is 4,000 gallons with the engine plus 6 people, but they did not get credit for their water shuttle because we don't have enough manpower to maintain a water shuttle.
You may have shared with them, but from the perspective of insurance, insurance carriers, you look at it from a overall appetite standpoint. Different carriers have different appetites that that they'll play within, so to speak. And if something's off kilter on a risk and it's outside of their appetite, they'll simply decline. So it becomes a supply-demand issue as to how many carriers will quote. The more carriers that will quote, the more competitive the pricing will be. A lot of carriers take the perspective that if the risk is a 10, a 9, or an 8, they simply have to decline coverage. The reinsurers won't even let them reinsure it, or won't let them insure it. Anywhere between that and a 4, it's a mixed bag. Some carriers will offer quotes, but the rating won't be as competitive. And then 1, a 2, or a 3, of course, from a PPC standpoint, is within appetite for almost any carrier, and we'll get the best rate.
All right, do y'all have any questions for him? Travis, thank you so much for taking the time for this call. I appreciate it a lot, and you've actually filled in the gap I think that we needed. And so I'm going to have to get back to my meeting if I can, but thank you so much.
Yeah, sure thing. Let me know
I
if
was
I can
telling
help
them
you.
that it's amazing how you took the time to go to an actual ISO inspection with us and watch what was going on and see the process, how it's working. And you probably from the inside of the insurance side probably know more about this ISO process than probably anybody that I've seen so far. So that's why I wanted to call you and ask if it would be all right for you to talk to us.
Plays a big part in what we do. I always like to know all sides of the fence.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Travis. Appreciate it so much.
Sure thing. Take care.
So basically what he was saying again, just to reiterate what it was said, the PPC score will affect you, and that the higher you, in other words, the better your score gets, the better you do. In other words, like the better people can use that score to be able to have better insurance rates. And they're paying this every year, so that's what's neat about it. It's a great investment because you get this return annually. It's not like a one-time return you get from somewhere. I mean, they're having to pay these policies every year, and most people's policies are tied into their mortgage, so that means that this really affects even their mortgage cost monthly. So if all of a sudden they see a benefit, then yes, I mean, their mortgage price goes down, and which is a huge deal for mortgage payment to reduce. All because the fire department, because fire department's the only one that take this test. Nobody else. I mean, the whole test is geared around. They look at the fire department as kind of center hub of emergency management and emergency services, and that's what makes an insurance company feel good or at risk. And that's how this sets. Now there are other things that you'll hear people talk about. They'll say like, well, what about like flood insurance or hurricanes and all? Those are separate. That's a different underwritten policy part of it. That doesn't have anything to do with like whether you got paid because your home burned down or whether it was broken into last night and they've taken all these things and what's covered and what. I mean, those are underwritten sections of a policy, but that's not the homeowner policy. The homeowner policy is driven by this PPC score. This PPC score sets that. The unique thing on yours is that by being able to spend so much time with them, and they've worked extremely hard on this. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, they really worked hard on this program. And but the thing we could never overcome was the manpower. We tried and tried and tried, and no matter what we did, the lack of manpower. I mean, like they're getting by, but like if you look at their response rate versus, in other words, like they don't have things like downtime like normal places. They don't. I mean, you have times here where you may literally not have an ambulance available because they're all out, they're gone. There's no backup. There's no. I mean, you can only get to so far, and you get squad 1, 2, 3, and all of a sudden, boom, you don't have anything left. So the biggest thing that I see that I could report to you is that they have done an extremely good job trying to work on this program. I do want to finish out with the numbers here in just a second, but I can never say enough on the manpower side is the one thing that they could truly use your help on, because it's the one area that that centers on the commission sets the pace on what they can hire, and it's just that way. I mean, the fire department may know they need, but they can't do it without your blessing. My job is to make sure that you understand that it's a worthy investment. If you needed to go up, you'll get a return out of it that makes it worth it to the resident. And actually, the return can be much greater than what you spend. All it would take is y'all to do a water shuttle, drop this thing down to a class 4, which would not be hard, where you go straight class, and you're talking being able to save millions of dollars with an expenditure that wouldn't even be half that. So it's a win-win. That's why so many places are now really into this ISO, supporting it and trying to help it out to do well. Let's go really quick to page 7, and I'll move that along because I know y'all have other things that you've got to do, so I don't want to take up too much of your time on this. But if you notice on the training side shows weaker than actually what it is. That was the part where we saw that didn't make any sense. Your guys do live fire training, they do smoke training, they do, these are the more exotic, higher hour training, and yet we got credit for 0, which that caught us right there. Like, that's impossible. Like, how do you get 0? And then we found out that a part of the program he's looking through, as he's analyzing it, they didn't even see it.
Well, if he didn't see it, then how do we get credit for that? I mean, is that we're just going to have to wait till next year because he missed it?
No, actually, they're working on redoing it right now and redoing some of those numbers so we get that back. In other words, we're not going to let them like just go, oh, I'm sorry, you're not going to get that. Does that make sense? But I'm going to take you to the page, and you'll be able to see what we saw that got our attention. So the way this thing works with training, go to page 17.
Hey, Jim?
Yes, sir.
For just a second, just to answer Commissioner's question. When we realized, the part we talked about first got here tonight, that we thought there was a couple of training questions as far as something that wasn't jiving, I reached out to the president of the company, and we're in talks now. We'll probably hear something back next week. And he's already talked to us on the phone and said that it looks like the data that we've sent them, I don't know if they had a bad format on their side, but we expect to get something back in the next week or so to adjust that.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of
you.
the problems that ISO is having to do is they're trying to take the data that we send them and balance it out to a way to interpret it into their computer algorithm. And somehow when they did this, it went way south. Because if you look at the very beginning on top of page 17, it goes facilities use, and it goes out of 35 points you could get for credit for that, and they got 0. The only problem is that to get a perfect score, you only have to do 18 hours. Our average was 14 hours. So we were way up into this number, but we got 0. And anyway, so it started making us notice that there were other issues just like this on the training side. So we were trying to figure out where is this coming from, and apparently we took our data, we moved it into a different Excel format, and that format then seemed to fit with their format, and that seemed to have changed things drastically. And they've gone back and looked, and they realized it's the same numbers, but it's in a format now that will integrate with their system. Unfortunately, a lot of these computer programs, when fire departments go to them, it doesn't mean that they'll fit within the ISO need for their system. And that's what happened. I mean, we had pages and pages and pages of training. And I think in all reality, if somebody had taken the time to go through 5 hours of trying to match them all together, then they would have come up with the same conclusion we did. The difference is that we did the 5 hours. We literally broke it down where there was no way they could not see, you know what I mean?
So how
What the
many
truth
points
was.
do you perceive that could be credited?
Excuse me.
Because-
Well, the reality is, just on that facility training alone, we lost over 3 points just for that one thing out of the 53. Our goal was to try to get us to the 60 point, which got us to the 4,
Right.
because we're close to that niche. And so that's why we wanted it correct. And we found multiple things. Whether we'll be able to make it to that point or not is hard to say. Without the manpower is the largest point item of the entire event. It's 15 points all by itself. That's why when we talk about manpower, it's such a huge deal. That's a grade and a half all by itself. And it's not saying that you have to have 50 people on duty a day. It's not like that. It's just saying for your community, do you have enough people to be able to, if you have an EMS and they're over on a call here, and maybe you had an EMS and they're over on a call here, do you still have enough capability within your community to be able to go put out a suppression fire? And actually, there's more stress on them now than there was too. They've just changed another process in ISO, because it is a floating benchmark and it's normal, and we're constantly trying to move up to that benchmark because the benchmarks they set make sense. We have a thing that we go to called fire calls. Fire calls are when we register a fire call down on our reports. That means that we got there, was not a true structure fire. Maybe it was smoke on the stove or whatever, but it didn't damage anything. So we call it a fire call. But when the call comes in from 911, all we hear is that there's a possibility of fire because there's smoke. Well, if you hear smoke, that means fire. ISO now wants us to send an engine, the tanker, and the minimum people to that event, even though it may not be a structure fire. Well, in the past, we could have sent a pickup truck to do that, to check on it and see, was it really a bad event or was it not? Well, not anymore. So now we're behind on manpower, but now we're about to be put under more call load. And so, again, but do we need to do that? We should, yes. I mean, I can remember in Guyton Fire Department when I was the chief there, or the station chief, we had a door on the back side of our cafeteria, and if you didn't close it just right, you got into the wind or some kind of a disturbance, and the door would jiggle, and all of a sudden it would set off the fire alarm for the cafeteria. And we all knew, because it had been doing it for years, like, oh my gosh, it's that thing. You'd go down there, and sure as the world, boom, close the door. But see, those days, it's not like that. Now, if that call went off, I have to send a full alarm.
Okay, can we come back to the training side? Help me understand, I'm looking at page 17.
Yes, sir.
Some of it just doesn't make, I'm missing the way it's laid out, because it says credit for training is total of 9 points.
Yes,
Top
it is.
heading. Yet you got earned credit and credit available.
Yeah, how you would look at that is that's 35% of the 9 points.
So this is a percentage.
Of the 9 points.
Okay, so this
So
is
that's
not
the
the credit
largest-
available, it's a percentage of 9 points.
That's the percentage of the
Okay,
9
so
points.
that's
But
kind of
see,
tough.
that's the largest item in the entire thing of the 9 points.
It is, but I also look and see in that 25% of the 9 points is for company training. I
Yes.
see each one of these, and while even like pre-planning fire, 12%, that's 12% of 9, that's a 1.5 essentially. And so I'm trying to understand why we are missing on some of these, because I'm confident we got time for training. We're building out a training facility and things, so that's something that we can handle inside that's not additional manpower. Because I get the fact that we'd love to have a fire truck at every corner.
Mhm.
We'd love to be able to send them to everywhere. It's just absolutely not practical.
But the problem is if you improve this training score, that cannot get anybody a water shovel. That can't get rid of that 8. See, that's the problem, is you got an issue of a 5 and you got an 8. What does that mean? People within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant, they get great scores. How many people do you have that live within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant? Less than 10%. So that means less than 10% of your community can actually enjoy the great rate. But 90% basically then cannot enjoy that great rate. But if you had the manpower, they could all enjoy that great rate.
I understand, but all these other things come into play to
I agree that would
establish the
help,
score.
yes,
All
yes.
I'm trying to understand is,
Yes.
what I'm concerned with is we're not maximizing on the points where we can score high.
Well-
And it does affect the overall ISO. So I'm just trying to understand, I want to make sure what I understand what we're looking at here. And
All of
this
these-
credit available is a percentage.
All of these,
that.
though, I think you're going to say they will change and improve, because the problem was their program did not pick up a lot of the hours y'all done. What they were doing is it was getting confused between EMS, they don't give us credit on EMS hours, and fire hours. And they were taking a lot of the hours that they do that were true fire, where it actually said if they'd gone a little bit farther into the notes where they'd be at McClenny trying to actually work with the fire building, you know what I mean? And it would show on there exactly what they're doing. They never even looked at that.
Right.
They
So-
just assumed that it was EMS.
To piggyback off of what you're saying right here, if we improve on this and they come back with better training results and better numbers here, we're only almost 6.5 points away from a class 4
Yes.
at that point. So every
Well,
point right here matters.
I think you could be right at it. I think you could be really close to that. But
Right.
that's
Really
still,
close in there is a difference. So we can be really close, but if we're not there, it still don't get us. So that's what I'm trying to understand.
well, but if you let's say that you said, okay, fine, we'll hire 3 people. That's all we're going to do. We're going to hire 3 people per shift. Just 3 people. 3 people is how much is 3 people?
Brings to 12.
No, how much money is it gonna cost you if you hire 9 people? How much is that gonna cost?
About $1 million.
Okay, $1 million. That $1 million would generate out about $2.5 to $4 million. See, that's what you have to see, is that you may spend that. It's true, but I can show you mathematically. I mean, I can prove it, that the money that comes back, because all of a sudden this 90% of the people that couldn't get anything better than an 8B now all of a sudden could get a 5 or a 4, and now their insurances are cut in half at a minimum, that their savings is like 4 times what it would cost in any kind of increase in taxes. I mean, because that's the thing. It's all about. My dad was a banker. He ran Atlantic National Bank for 20 years right there in Jacksonville. And the rest of the life he was with Raymond Mason over at American National Bank. And what Dad always told me was, you want a good investment, make sure you're spending on something that gives great return. And you wouldn't see these other places investing in these type programs unless they saw and knew that there would be a huge return. It is expensive to have to make a shift, but I think that we could give you the data if you wanted to prove that that would be a tremendous investment in your community at trying to give what I call a level playing field, so it's not the haves and the have-nots. I mean, so everybody gets treated the same, whether you're within 1,000 foot of a fire hydrant or you're not within 1,000 foot. It wouldn't matter. You get the same rate, whether the fire department sits in your front yard or if it's 2 miles down the road. You'd get the same rate, and that's when an equality happens. That it's amazing, and it happens all the time. I mean, when I first went to do Jacksonville, they thought that I literally had 3 heads, because I came to them talking to them how they were going to have to use tankers, and they'd had these things put in mothballs for probably 10 years, and nobody used those anymore, hardly at all. And yet today, if you ask them how it's changed their life, it's drastic. But they just never really understood that it would have that type of a return if they would participate. Because all it does is the tanker becomes a mobile fire hydrant. That's all it is. And so if you can take this on a repetitive basis and deliver that thing to these homes, ISO knows clearly any insurance industry, without us having water, we can't do much. I mean, we can save people, we can try to keep exposures down, we can try to keep the house next door from burning, but when it gets to extinguishment, water's pretty much it. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, our whole thing is geared around water. And the reason you get those benefits from the insurance industry is because you're willing to take the time to have mobile hydrants, which are these tankers, in this evolution, and it has a huge effect.
Did you take into account the water supply hydrants that we put in ponds and things around the county?
Yeah, the pond, we did that. We did 50-year drought studies on like different ponds to where you could do, because we were really hoping that we were going to be able to do the water shuttle from the beginning. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It's a manpower issue. And but we just didn't have enough manpower to be able to do it, because it takes so many people. You've got to have 4 people at the fire. You got to have 3 people that are on the tankers, so that's 7 people right off the bat. You have to have a manager of that's 8. You have to have another engine over here, that's 9, where you refill. There's got to be a person that's with that engine that hooks up the tankers and fills them and then lets them go. That's 10. See, we already ran over our numbers off the bat. So we didn't, no matter what we did, we didn't have enough people. It's like we had the equipment, we had the capability, and we knew that they gave us credit for having the tankers because of the fact that you can't get the Y without that. The Y means you did get tanker credit, you just didn't get that equalization to where that they give you the credit that you're moving them fast enough and quick enough and have enough manpower to move these things around to have that low score, because it's just like you have a fire hydrant. Usually on tanker shuttles, we're actually delivering about 800 to 900 gallons a minute. A poor tanker shuttle would be about 500 gallons a minute. You have many hydrants in cities that don't do but 600 gallons a minute. And I mean, that's a fire hydrant.
Call the workshop to an end. We got 4 minutes before
Yes,
our
sir.
board meeting starts.
I appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to be here, and I'll come back at any time and we can go over this stuff any other time you'd like. But they did a really good job. They worked very hard on this. They really did.
I'd
You have
like
a
to
good
see-
department.
2 things I would like to see. I'd like to see the updated numbers when they come in.
Yes, sir.
And that presented to the board. And also would like to see
Excuse me.
what it would take to get a county to a 5 flat
Yes.
without
straight.
the B. The B's a big number out here. It's not the 4, the 1, the 6. You could be a 6, that B. And that's where we're doing the tank. You're talking about the tankers.
Yeah,
The
that
shuttle.
tanker shuttle would do tremendous things for you. And you have,
That's the two things I'm looking for as me as a commissioner. I think that's what the other commissioners are concerned about also. But we would like to see an update on the number, and we appreciate your work.
yeah, thank y'all so much for allowing us to be here, and we'll keep you up to speed on it. We're considering staying right with it.
Thank you.
y'all.
Close the workshop. call this Baker County Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. I would ask if you have a cell phone or anything that makes noise, if you would please turn it on silent or vibrate so not to disturb the meeting. If you want to address the board and you're not on the agenda, we have a public comments section. If you'll fill out a speaker card, it's by the fire chief on the back wall, and you'll get that to me because we have no staff tonight. I'll make sure that you get to speak at the appropriate time, and we always encourage public comments here at Baker County Board of Commissioners. I'm going to ask Mr. Mobley if he would do the prayer, and then he has someone to do the pledge.
That's right. Miss Leah, if you want to come up.
If you would stand with us, please.
There we go. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight, Father, just asking your blessings upon this meeting, Lord. Lord, we just pray right now for our county, for our nation, and for our world, Father God. We just pray right now for the first responders here in our county, Lord. Lord, just put a blessing upon each and every one of them as they serve our community faithfully, Lord. Lord God, we just pray for the meeting. Give us the wisdom and guidance to make the correct decisions and to the best of our abilities for this county, Lord. We love you and thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
You want to go right there and say the pledge for us? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. You didn't say your name for her.
That was Miss Leah Crawford.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on into our agenda. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda itself?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. I have a motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move to our next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the consent agenda items. Has everyone had a chance to overlook those items? If everything's okay, I'll take a motion to approve.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move into our next item on the agenda, which is elected officials. There's a lot of people in here, but I don't see any elected officials. So it's having none, we'll move into our next item on the agenda, which is public comment. I have one speaker card, and Mr. Larry Porterfield with our veterans.
Pass this around for you guys to see what I'm gonna be talking about, all right? Pass that around. All right, first of all, I'm not gonna ask you guys for any money for this right here,
Praise Jesus.
all right? Keep your money. Don't need it. What this is, I designed this to represent, to honor all the veterans in Baker County, past, present, and in the future. It's a pentagon side shaped, which each side represents one of the armed services. Same thing, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. That's the reason why I chose this design. And if you can read it, in honor of all veterans from Baker County who courageously served our nation in order to ensure our freedom. I designed it, I'm having it made personally, and it cost $8,333 to me.
Wow.
So far I've raised about $6,000 from friends, neighbors, veterans, whatever. I do not want any of your money on this, period. Okay, but what I would like to, the other one up there that showed all the greenery, that's at the Veterans Park, right in front of the shelter. What I will ask, if the county would not like to donate something toward this, if maybe I could use the road department and park department with their equipment and manpower to go ahead and excavate in that area, because I'm going to have an 8x10 slab out there so people can walk up to it and look at it. It's going to be 10 foot wide because the width of that is 4 foot 6 inches. But go 10 foot wide, somebody can go up there and stand on each side of it and have 2 feet plus or minus. They want to take pictures of it. So I will ask if maybe it was possible to use the park department and the road department, their equipment, and personnel. When I get ready to go ahead and do, it's gonna be a couple of months down the road.
So you need to have these bushes moved, is what you're asking?
Well, we're gonna dig those out, some of them,
Okay,
and with that, if you can, when you're out there, you can see the road,
right.
the train drops off. We'll be digging that down to level it up to put this slab there. And what you do, what it's gonna be, when you drive right into the park, at the gate, that's what you're gonna see.
Okay. I understand what you're saying now. I see no problem with working with the road department or in the parks department to get it prepared to receive the concrete and to get the MSR part, it's a county part.
Thank you, I appreciate that so much.
So I would recommend that you get with Mr. Lee, and then he can actually get with the Parks Department or whatever, and
I always get in him, one way or the other, in his pocket or in his work or whatever.
But-
Now secondly,
And the other commissioners, I'm thinking it's the same thing. Yeah.
secondly, I had, I've got a sign down there, park maintained by veterans. And the other day I had somebody come and say, how come all the trash out here in the lake? Well, there's an inlet, curb inlet, and on top of the hill, there's one below it, and all that water from the trash, people throw in the road, whatever, comes down in those inlets and goes right into our lake. So I took it upon myself today to go ahead and investigate these gutter guards. And you can get them anywhere. You can get them 6-inch diameter, 10 foot long, whatever, anywhere from like $117 to $300 or whatever, something like that. And I just wonder if maybe you guys can discuss that and put one there, 'cause like I say, it's with these rains we've been having, it's pathetic down there. I mean, it's just, people go by and, they throw their cups out in the road or whatever, and some of them falls off the back of the truck or whatever. And all that trash ends up in that lake. So that's just something, James, you got any suggestions
Mr.
on?
Bennett on that,
I'm
that's
trying
his
to make sure
special.
I'm understanding where are you talking about this is happening at?
Okay, you got-
on US 90?
On you got the entrance to the lake.
Yeah.
On the upside hill, go toward Ace, 100 or so feet, there's an inlet up there.
Yes.
Below it, as you're approaching it, there's one there.
Yeah, so I know where you go. The drainage system comes in.
Right.
You're talking about putting something on those drainage.
On those, just on the gutters, right there, the gutter guards.
You're not going to be able to. DOT will not allow you. I can tell you that already. They will not permit it. As we can't put anything out there on US 90. It is a state road owned and maintained, and they will not, because if you start putting anything there that blocks that water flow, you start having an issue with water spreading out into the roadway.
But see, they're made to let the water go through, but keep the trash out.
I understand what you're asking for, Mr. Porterfield. If there's a way I could tell you that we could get it done, I'd be glad to do so. But I know DOT's position on this, and I know what they would do to it. We can make the ask. I don't mind making that ask to see what could be done. But I don't want to give you false hope.
Oh, I understand
I
that.
really believe that I know their challenge, or what they will come back from their drainage engineer and what they're going to say, because I've worked with him in the past.
Okay, that's
And
fine.
but I'll make the ask and see if there's anything that could be done, but I just don't want to mislead you to tell you.
Oh, no,
those
no, I
things.
understand that completely.
But
I understand
I
that.
deal with DOT pretty regularly still. In my current role, I deal with them, so I'm glad
Right.
to have that conversation separately with them to see if there's anything that could be done to help minimize that trash. I know
Okay.
I understand exactly what your issue is.
Okay, well, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Now give me my pictures back.
That was Jesse Quinn.
And Chris, I'm gonna get to you, buddy.
Thank you, Mr.
There'll be a couple months down the road.
Jesse Quinn. And then let him choose the part, and whatever, how he wants to do it.
They'll get together.
Thank you, Larry.
They'll figure it out.
Just thirsty.
Easy solution.
They won't allow them to go to Buddy's or anything.
I don't have any other speakers cards. So if anyone would like to speak on the board, just if you would fill out a card and get it to me, I'll let you speak. Then we're gonna move on to our next item on the agenda. just to remind people, I have a 6 o'clock public hearing, so I will be going out of our regular meeting into a public hearing right at 6 o'clock. So if we don't get to you before 6, stick around, because we got a public hearing, and I have to go into it at 6 o'clock. But I'm gonna try to rush through this as fast as I can. Request for, the first one we have is a request for concurrence with Ms. Jordan Duncan for Baker DOH. I have Aaron Otis is going to present this.
Make sure I get it correct.
Yeah.
So, my name is Aaron Otis. I'm with the Florida Department of Health. Excited to be here tonight to represent our State Surgeon General. We have the ability to appoint the health officers, so we are tonight appointing Jordan Duncan for your potential as a nomination for your new health officer with Baker County. So it's up to you. We've already agreed to it, so it's for you guys to take a vote. So Jordan, you want to say anything?
Hey, good evening, Chairman and
Good evening.
Commissioners. I just want to say thank you for considering me for concurrence. I'm really excited about this new role. As most of you know, I've been interim at the Health Department for about 13 months now. And I have been in these chambers many times before with former health officers, and I've seen the support that you guys have lended to the County Health Department. And you have been so supportive over the years, and we're very grateful for that. I grew up in Baker County, as did my parents, which most of you know. And I've received many services personally and for my family at the health department over the years, and I know the important work that we do in public health. And so I'm looking to continue that work and to bring some stability and some longevity to the position, and I hope to serve in this position for many, many years to come. So I thank you again for your consideration.
Yes. Any board want to speak?
Yeah, I want to say one, congratulations for the consideration as well. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your background. The health department provides an absolute much needed service for our community, and a lot of times people don't realize the true value it brings. And so from my perspective, thank you for serving as interim so far and continue to do that. I'm going to, of course, fully support it, and I'm glad to put a motion on the floor at the appropriate time, but we appreciate what you're doing, and it's always great to have some from local, hometown, continue in these roles, because it makes a huge difference when you know the community, understand and know the people here, and those family ties make a big difference. So thank you for your service, and look forward to your continued success with it as well.
Any other board members?
I'm glad we're having somebody from Baker County. It's been switched and switched and switched, and I'm very pleased.
It's been very quiet the last couple of years, so that's a good thing.
Yes, it has been.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it means a lot to have all the support
That was
that's
what I
shown
was
up
fixing to say.
Yeah.
as well. So it means a lot.
Yeah, we have an absolutely amazing team to work with, and the majority of our staff are local, and so they have a heart for the community, not just public health. So we have a vested interest in offering the best services that we can to our community, because these are our friends and our neighbors. So, and they do an absolutely amazing job.
And I can say, as a commissioner, I can remember when the health department was in this building, and this is where, as a kid, is where I got service here in this
building.
building we're sitting in right now.
Yep,
And
this
now
is the
we're
main
out
lobby.
there. Exactly. I've sit here waiting for my shots and waiting to do my football physicals, and so it's an honor to have someone represent Baker County here in Baker County. And I can tell you, Baker County is one of the top health departments in the state of Florida. I hear that many times at the state of Florida, on the state of Florida level. So, and it's all because of the staff and the people that surrounded you. And I know about everyone in the room, so I ain't gonna say nothing bad about you. But just to see the support here means a lot, because I've seen a lot of people come and go, and I've never seen this much support for this in the building. So you're blessed to be surrounded with the people you're surrounded with. And that just means you're a good leader, because you've been there for what, 13 months now? I always thought you was there. I already thought you was there.
Well, I've been working for the Department of Health since 2012, and
Yeah.
I've been in Baker since 2014, and I've
Yeah.
served as the interim administrator for the last 13 months.
Yeah, so it's an honor. And I'll take a motion to
I make a motion that we approve the request for concurrence for Ms. Jordan Duncan for the Baker County Department of Health.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, all those opposed, there's the door. All those opposed, same sign. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And I say welcome to Baker County because you are the Baker County. And we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you as well.
Thank you. Can we take a photo with her? Would you like to have a photo with all your support?
Please, I would love
I would really like to see that.
Okay.
And we'll just kind of stand back here, and then all your friends and help come on up.
Slide this way.
You have us here.
We'll all be up here. I see somebody with a camera.
Let's take it.
There we go. That's a good thing.
You're not going to be in front of you. You're all right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move along in our agenda now. Item number 2, which is approval of the grant application to SAFER 2025. Chief Nelson.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. As y'all just heard less than an hour ago with our ISO consultant, obviously we need more personnel to do our job safely and effectively and help to protect Baker County better as a whole. We've been up here several times expressing our needs, and we were waiting on this report to come back and statistically just say pretty much the same thing we've been saying, is that we need more staffing. Between us going, two things kind of glare out to me. Number one is response times, anywhere from 12 to 20 minutes to get to some areas of the county, especially on that north end. And then obviously our stat at 0 when we run out of rescues, having enough personnel to be able to backfill, to provide for services when we get overwhelmed. I did the stats today. This fiscal year so far, we're almost 10% up in 911 transports to the hospital, up from a number of 1683 to 1842. That's taking people to the emergency room. So that tells me that our county is still continuing to grow, and our level of service continues to grow. Just one of the things that I've got tonight I'm asking, obviously we need some more folks in Sanderson. We've asked about that, and that'll be coming up in the future budget talks. Plant AS is coming to Sanderson. The plans are sitting in the community development office to be reviewed, and so we heard tonight about how important it is to have good fire insurance, and those companies are going to need that if we want to continue to have development in our county. So having the full staffing there that's ISO recognized in Sanderson of 4 people is important, and that's also the NFP requirement. Helping us to put that 4th rescue in town when needed during peak times, that's what extra staffing will help. But also the last thing is for us to begin staffing Kyler Station. And so what I'm proposing tonight is to apply for another SAFER grant. That's called the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response Grant for 2025. Last year, 2024, we applied, and it was 100% match, but we did not get it. We're going to reapply again this year, change a few of the little parameters. and think that we still have a good chance of getting it. It's about a 16% chance of getting the grant. But if we were to get the grant, they would provide about 60% of the funding, and the county would be responsible for 40% over 3 years. So I've got it broke down on your sheet there of what it would be for each year at the bottom. Year one would be 25% of the grant, which would be $150,000. Year two would be $150,000, and then year three, which would be 65%, would be $390,000. So, and we would have to budget that in the next budget year, not currently. We would probably find out somewhere around August to October if we were selected. So we would kind of have to at least start talking about this in the budget process. But this is just to make application. Application's due on July the 3rd, and I need about a week and a half to write it. It takes a pretty good amount, so.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I have a question. I appreciate Chief Clinton calling me and having a conversation about it. I'll support making the application for it, but one of the things I'm going to continue to make sure it happens again is if we get it, we better monitor.
Yes, sir.
And I'll express my concerns again. The lack of monitoring
Yes, sir.
through the last 3 years of SAFER put us with a $980,000 of expenses that we hadn't recovered, which we could have been recovering all along, and nobody raised the red flag. So while I'll support the grant, my expectations are much different on what my expectations are for reporting and keeping the board updated when we do ask for these.
Yes, sir.
Is that a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion.
Second. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item number 3 is approval of the SHIP annual report 22-23. Miss Lydia Magano.
Here you go. That's pretty close.
That was
That is
close.
pretty close.
I
That
put my Spanish kind of speaking in there.
should be it should be Italian though, but I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Well, see, I do something good, and you want me to be Italian.
I said I would take it. Good evening, Commissioners. I am here to present you with the fiscal year of 22-23 SHIP funding annual report. I have to submit this report to Florida Housing Finance Corporation to close out our fiscal year of 22-23. I have met with the Finance Department prior to coming to you all this evening, and we are all on the same page. Our numbers match, and that is key. So I gave you a little synopsis, but I will briefly go over it for those listening at home. The SHIP program receives approximately $350,000 in SHIP funding each year. We are allowed to retain 10% for administrative fees. This particular funding cycle, we had a situation where someone had to physically pay a loan back rather than having it be forgiven. And so that brought some income into the program of $46,000.
Can you elaborate on that?
I'm sorry?
Why was that? What?
Sometimes there are situations where either the property is put up for a tax deed because there are no heirs to pass the property along to, or the individuals are not able to financially income qualify to remain into the home per Florida Housing Finance's standards. So that causes an alternative means to have to deal with the property. Sometimes that's a sale, sometimes that's a tax deed sale, but in either case.
And there's, with this program, there's essentially a lien on it and it has to be paid back.
That is correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just want to clarify. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we are allowed to keep an administrative fee from those additional incomes. So we had a total revenue available for community use of $359,000, $573.32. And we expended every last penny. We are carrying nothing forward. We are dead zero. And we were able to use that funding on approximately 7 units. And we were able to help one family in the low income range, one in the very low income range, and 5 in the extremely low income range. Those are all also targets, set-asides, that we are required to meet as well. And so the approximate average amount of SHIP funds that we did use for emergency repairs this cycle was $15,740.09. The average amount of funds used for owner-occupied rehab was $33,136.81. And the average amount of SHIP funds used for demolition, new construction, replacement was $89,902.90. Now, that number seems a little bit low. I can hear the wheels turning. That is partially because there were 2 projects that were split across 2 funding years. So it doesn't count them in both funding years, it counts them in one or the other, and they just were not counted in this. That's why the average seems low. And we met all of our set-asides. We have to, special needs applicants, we have to set aside at least 20% or $67,000. And we expended $326,385.73 for what are considered special needs. And staff recommends approval of the SHIP closeout report for funding year 22-23 and signature of the accompanying certifications for submission to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. Please.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just have a question or so. On this, we said we was able to help 7.
Yes.
And we got 3 different categories here.
Yes.
One was emergency repairs, some for, but in average. Do we know how many was in each one of those categories?
There was 1 person in low income, 1 in very low.
No, I'm talking about like the SHIP housing for emergency
How many
repairs.
houses?
How many emergency repairs were they? Versus how many owner rehabs versus?
There were 3.
3 emergency repairs. Do we know how many rehabs there were?
I believe there was 3 of those as well.
Okay, and any idea how many new construction? Because it don't take long to run through 359,000.
Exactly,
So that's why I was
exactly.
just-
I believe
actually
there was 2
There was
because they were split
3 and then
between.
1 split.
Yeah.
So the reason I ask is with the program, is there a I don't want to say a mandate or directions or guidance on how much must be used for different type of services versus new versus rehab versus
No.
and
There's yes and no. There's what is called a 75% set aside for construction. Now that can be an emergency repair because a roof replacement would qualify for that, or a wheelchair ramp or something of that nature. As long as it is something of that, it counts towards that 75% set aside for construction. So
and
yes and no.
so how do we determine what we do? Is it just when by the order by which the applicants submit, and then we just evaluate each one, and depends on what it qualifies for? Because I was under the understanding, I may be incorrect, that's why I'm asking. Basically, you have to accept the applications by the order in which they were received, and you go through and evaluate it to ensure it's eligible. And based on its eligibility, then each one that's eligible, that project gets funded, regardless of which one it is, until you run out of money.
Correct.
So it's not a matter of severity of the damage. It's not a matter. That's my understanding. So that's what I'm asking.
Right.
Is that still the case where you could have somebody in the 6th one that was approved will run out of money? The number 7th one that put in the application, their place may be far more in much worse condition, but too bad you aren't in the order. Is that still the way it works?
Sort of. You're partially correct. It is first come, first qualified, set aside, and then need. So if I have 3 people that hit the first 3 targets equally, the deciding factor is when I go out to physically do that site inspection. I have to determine whose house is in worse shape. And that will be the first one of those 3 that would be helped. I have a situation right now where the 4 people remaining on my list, you could literally throw a dart. They're in equally bad shape, and all 4 are equally in need at the exact same time, but the next round of funding, I'm not gonna be able to do all 4.
Okay.
So
Well,
the
some of that
CDBG
funding-
grant, I'm hoping, is gonna help
Like I say, some
them.
of that money you can shift towards CDBG grant, because it can be a companion to the SHIP grant.
Yes,
So
yes,
I would look at when that money comes in, which we know we're gonna get it because it's already been signed. I would look at helping the SHIP grant with that CDBG funding,
yes.
so we can get these people out of those houses into good houses.
Absolutely. I will tell you that this has been the shortest waiting list, though, since I took over. These folks, I took these applications in October of '23, I believe it was. And so these last 4 people are the last out of that group.
Well, I know that people know that there's going to be some CDBG funding coming in, so you'll be seeing a lot more applications.
And I've made sure that I've let people know that, you know, I have no idea when I'm going to be able to advertise, but that CDBG is going to be coming up.
Right.
And so I have a list of people who have
Yeah.
called.
And that has a different parameters
Absolutely.
than the SHIP program, and we'll
Yes.
be able to help a little bit more people.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that coverage. It wasn't on the approval of the report, but I did want at least have an understanding of that. Okay.
This is for fiscal year 22-23.
That is correct.
They
And-
run that way, it runs that way.
2 years.
2 years.
We
Two
receive
of
our
them.
funding and then we have 3 years to spend it.
Right.
And this
Okay.
report is due by September of this year.
That is correct.
So we're ahead of the schedule.
We are absolutely ahead of
Where we
schedule.
wanna be.
Yeah, I was making sure 23-24 we weren't about it.
Which
Maybe. We're not
I
being
could,
sanctioned.
I could, I'm ready to submit. Florida Housing is not always ready for them to be submitted.
Right.
I went to run my test with this one and there was an error and they're like, oh, well, we weren't ready yet. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
I move the approval of the SHIP annual report as presented by Ms. Lydia.
Second.
A motion second, all those in favor? Well, I'm gonna have a discussion before then. I just want to say, we appreciate what you do over there. Another one of our employees that's noticed at the state level. She don't know about it, but I can tell you a story about it. You're doing great work, and people notice it.
Thank you.
With that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
All right, what time is it? We got to go roll on, Jimmy. All right. Uh-oh. Let me look at my time again.
Start the timer. Somebody's got a timer for us.
You're doing a great job, Danny. Keep going.
I'm going to apologize in advance.
I give you, we got about 20 minutes.
Yes, sir.
You
So
got it?
I'll move quickly through the first part. The only report I have on what we normally do each week is we did submit today the Hurricane Helene County Cat B project, and the amount submitted for reimbursement was $51,895.36. The eligible cost share, as it looks right now, is $38,921.52. There's a slight change there. I won't get into the weeds on it, but there's a part of that project that's reimbursable at 100% and one small part reimbursable at 75%. So that the numbers may change just a bit. And overarching update on all of the projects, we talked last week and I got some calls from media about the numbers. And so today we had our PDMG meeting. We requested, at the direction of the PDMG and a conversation I had with the state FDM representative in Orlando last week, we requested FDM to step in and basically make FEMA use the CEF costing method as opposed to the DOT method for all of our projects moving forward. We had requested it on the side. We weren't getting any response, and so we officially asked FDM to step in and help us make that happen. So we should see better numbers coming out as we move forward. Get to the meat and potatoes of it, and so I forwarded you all emails, and I hope you had a chance to take a look at those. And so what I'd like to do is kind of run down those projects one at a time and highlight the things that I specifically was looking for guidance on. And we'll start with one additional thing. So we met with Thomas Howland Ferguson last week, who had a chance to go through and take a look. We had some conversation about some possible discrepancies and some snags that may have been created in the process of the RFPs. The state and Ernst & Young, the state contractor, had voiced some concerns. After Thomas Howland Ferguson, John Bell got a chance to look at it last week. He feels that we are in a position that once we kind of the input from this board, that we can move forward with making an award on at least the Boy Scout camp, the boat ramp, and with the box covered on 23A. Don't smile too big yet. We haven't gotten all the way through. But his professional opinion is there shouldn't be any snags with those two projects very specifically. And the leaning was we think we're in pretty good shape all the way across the board for not having to resubmit those RFPs. So with that, we'll start off with the box culvert. And so what I've done is segregated your emails by project and then contractors for each project. And let me give you the overarching is that the RFPs and the approach and understanding of the project were varied, significantly varied within them. And so in the process, as we move forward in grading these RFPs to get the board's pulse for what specific information, RFIs, requests for information, that we want to ask of those contractors, but more specifically to kind of narrow the scope and get a true feeling for where the board is leaning on the projects. So with the first project being 23 box culvert, the first contractor, contractor one as it's labeled, basically it's almost verbatim from what the engineer summary report was that we provided for FEMA during this process. Very little changes. It's pretty straightforward. Again, literally almost word for word. However, when we moved to contractor two, there were a handful of things that jumped out. Draw your attention to the first paragraph that the contractor is recommending that communications and negotiations with adjacent property owner in obtaining drainage easement for the creek. This will provide space and optimal drainage solution and allow for future inspection and maintenance. I won't read the entire thing to you, but these are things that jumped out that were different between the different contractors in their proposal and their approach and understanding. The second part that I'll draw your attention to is a desire to limit the wetland impacts. This was not addressed by the first contractor, so it's different than the second contractor. Ultimately to limit the permitting, and the permitting is going to become a recurring theme here in just a moment, but again focusing on the fact that there's a significant difference, and again weighing that in the board's position overall on the projects. The repair of the culvert will likely qualify for a notice general permit from the St. Johns River Water Management District. Again, very specific permitting requirements, and then in the last the third paragraph on that page, fourth paragraph, specifying that the permitting process is going to be a minimum of 4 months on that project. The last point to raise on that particular, on contractor number 2, is the specific language they used in the second paragraph, referencing the fact that they're identifying that some of the mitigation are going to qualify. That's looking at it from a contractor perspective. So it really kind of fits into what we've been doing overall, which is trying to incorporate those things that would be considered by FEMA for mitigation and eligible for additional money beyond the reimbursement stage. Contractor number 3.
Hang on,
yes, sir.
If you don't mind, please. Tell me again what's the big difference here? He's saying that we need a drainage, get an easement, drainage easement, and so forth.
Yes, sir. That there's that for the long-term benefit and work of the project, that in their opinion, the county should consider obtaining an easement.
I can tell you from my perspective, the thing can be repaired. Not have to go out and get property and take additional property. It can be repaired because the side ditches can be piped straight into the side of the box culvert and not need to extend it any further out. You want a perfect example of that? Go look at 228, right just beyond the Mormon church there, that crossing. The ditches in some cases are piped picked up in pipes and piped right into the side of the box culvert. You eliminate any erosion for it. You don't have to have ditches going all the way out. So just understand that's a perspective.
That's exactly what we're looking for.
I'm not going to support trying to go get additional property when then we have engineering ways to solve it without doing that.
Any other input? Thank you, sir. Contractor 3. I'm going to draw a specific attention to this contractor because it'll come up in all three elements, but this particular contractor in the RFP went ahead and put together models, H&H, hydraulics and hydrology survey models, which again is an overarching theme for all of ours. Almost every single one of our projects is very specific to either a creek or the river. And so a handful of things that came up there, they recommended that what was in our RFP as far as the riprap, quoting here, higher velocities, larger diameter riprap, median 24 inches is generally recommended. So it's a variation from what not only our initial engineering summary report was, but also a difference in the other contractors on this particular specific approach. Additionally, they went on to say that does not recommend replacement in kind of the original riprap, but instead recommends minor dredging, ultimately, and then discharge side to accommodate aprons of bank and shore rubble up according to DOT specifications. That's different than the other two contractors. To excavate soil on the upstream or the outside face of the box culvert so that the joint can be exposed. This particular contract states that they're anticipated to qualify for exemptions under the St. John's Water Management. So again, conflicting opinions there. The project team will secure, this particular project, the contractor, in fact, in all three of their proposals specifically accepted the role of leading those conversations with the permitting agencies to address those permitting agencies. So significant differences there, and two of the contractors were very focused on the permitting process. The contractor number 2 in the beginning of all there said the critical path is going to be the permitting side of things.
But this one says it's the maintenance of existing infrastructure for 3, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And again, I'm not that person. For the board's information, I had a call in today with the United Federal Review, which is all of those, the Corps of Engineers, EPA. We've been working with them. FEMA hasn't really been letting us in the door yet and have that conversation together. Had a follow-up conversation with Tyler Thibodeau today, and they got the exact same email that you guys got with that information to provide us their very specific technical guidance or information, because truthfully, some of the proposals contradict each other on the permitting side. Mm-hmm. And so we've reached out to not only the Unified Federal Review for their input to get the actual agencies to tell us what their take on it is. We also reached out today, and Chris and I have been working with Florida DOT to also take a look at very specifically at Turner Cemetery Bridge, which we haven't gotten to yet, but we've also brought in Florida DOT to help us understand the differences in the proposals, so that we make sure not only we're comparing apples to apples, but we're operating off of good information when it comes time to grade those proposals. So that was 23 box covered. So if we go to the boat ramp.
So on this one, Denny, what guidance do you need from us? Anything else on this?
Well, you gave me part of it already, but I only got one input, and that's specifically on the easements. The easement's actually going to come up twice, and you can imagine that in the scope of things, if you're not mentioning and needing to secure easements, that may change what the outcome of the total bottom line might be. And so understanding that process, when one contractor never referenced it, in fact, in that case, only one contractor of the 3 referenced the easement, whether or not that's a priority for the group. And again, to clarify what they're actually saying is for future maintenance and access issues, it would make it easier for the county and Chris and his folks when they need to go in there, that they now don't have to worry about cutting trees down or working from the roadway. It gives them additional access, but just understanding where the board's priority is on those issues.
Okay, and as far as the permitting requirements, I think this really depends on what we do. If you go back with, but then the same thing going back, you replace it in kind, you're going to be exempt to it. It just depends on what we do. I am going to support making sure we put sufficient riprap at each end, because that is going to, it's not just the riprap. You gotta make sure you put all the underlying fabric and things down as well, so that it does not flood. The right riprap will make the difference whether it stays there or not.
So you bring us to a good point, and so Chris and I going over these, I'm not an engineer, I don't have that benefit. And Chris and I both got to a point where we first started just looking at the approaches to try to figure out how to wrap our heads around it. There are spots in there, don't let me speak for you, Chris, that are above both of our technical abilities to be able to decipher where one mentions it or one prefers it or suggests it and the other one doesn't.
Well, I don't take that as that one's going to ignore it and one's not. One just may not have felt it was compelling enough to put it in there. They're going to do an engineering analysis to determine what type of riprap to put there. They just may not have said that in there, where the second one made it a point of we really doing all this modeling. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the other one's not doing it. It's just they may not have made it a stronger point. Now they didn't think it was this big issue that's going to be part of what they do.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, so for the boat ramp, so the contractor number one essentially took the language out, but what's glaring in contractor number one is there's no mention of removing the old boat ramp. So they put the option in there to put it back, rebuild it in place, and they actually gave us 3 options on this, or to move it, but in removing it, it was never addressed to demolish and remove the existing boat ramp. Contractor number 2, very detailed as far as they're doing a handful of things there. The particular method, and I wanted to bring this before the board because it's not my language. So they're pouring the concrete and pushing the boat ramp in versus the other side had a pre-poured in place concrete boat ramp slab. So bringing out the fact that there was a handful of things that their proposal was to repair the boat ramp where it sits and then build the new boat ramp, leaving the old boat ramp in its place where it is now. So again, without the demolition being there, it makes a difference, and we had not discussed that at any point, and so I wanted to make sure whether or not the board was willing to accept that as part of the proposal. Additionally, as part of that was the new boat ramp. It's going to change, and there were several changes recommended as far as the angle, 14% or whether it's whatever, but there was a significant difference. The proposed new slab for contractor number 2 is 15 feet wide by the 115, 120. It seems to be flexible, whereas contractor number 3, it's 20 feet wide, very specifically 20 feet wide. Additionally, the other real difference in the two is in contractor number 3, absolutely talked about, they gave an option of rehabilitating the first boat ramp, but the ultimate goal of contractor number 3 was to build the new boat ramp and then remove and specifically identify leaving where the old boat ramp was when the concrete's pulled out, leaving it accessible for pedestrian, kayaks, and boat access to the river there. Also, with the contractor number 3 for the boat ramp, specifically talked about moving the boat ramp closer to the river. And both of their proposals for rehabbing and for the new, and I'm open to the board as in other words, is it a deal killer? Does it make a difference?
This is where I'm thinking. I read all the information she sent to the board members. I think this is a workshop item, and it's not an item for an update, because you're trying to get stuff from the board right now that we need to discuss in an open forum and not give you a decision on it tonight. It's just too much information.
Yes, sir.
My opinion. I think that this is a workshop item that needs to come back to the board when some of this stuff is hashed out. You got an engineer sitting here beside me that could help you with a lot of that stuff before it ever gets back to the board. I'm comfortable with Commissioner Bennett handling a lot of this stuff and then presenting it back to the board in a workshop format, because it's just too much information for us to make a good decision on what Baker County needs by what you're doing now.
And there's too many options.
I'm not
sure
comfortable.
what option
I would not
is
be
the
comfortable
correct
making a decision on an option tonight on any of it, because it's above my head, a lot of this stuff. But he knows.
Would you like for Dennis, for me to get with the other, Mr. Smiths, whatever, let's work through each one of these and come up with some recommended options for each one of these, and then we just bring it back to and present it to the board where we're at, and do it that way. Because I think another workshop, we've got another workshop already scheduled, if I'm not mistaken, not with this one, but another.
Right.
So and so, if that's okay, I will coordinate the time, come and meet with Dennis, we'll work our way through these, and then bring back recommendations for each one of the, Brand, here's the three things, here's our recommendation. Does that work for you?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, and we can do that, Dennis, I'll try to get something scheduled next week if that works.
If the
Now,
board's comfortable with that?
I like that.
Yeah, I'd like that on some of it too. See
You're
where-
welcome to it, but we can't do it together.
can't do it
Can't do it together, but I'll do it with Dennis myself.
That's why I'm here, Commissioner, is for that reason. Number one, I don't understand the rules, I'm not that guy. But number two, I do recognize that we have priorities that are set, and I didn't want to delay it until July the 15th, right? Because the process now is, we've been told by our contractor, we could make an award, right, forthwith. So I just want to make sure you got the information as quickly as possible, because I'm in the same
So why
boat.
don't we do this to try to creep at everything so there's no issue, unless you and I try to get together next week. I come up with the recommendation that we're talking about, then you can follow up with him to make sure if he has some other input or suggestions, and if there is some modifications to it, you know,
I would
talk
say
back.
just bring it back to the board.
And then it's
'Cause-
going to come back to the board.
Don't go through Commissioner Mobley. Just pick one of you, because you run the risk of Dennis being a conduit for a sunshine law violation. Just it's easier to avoid that.
Just let it. All right, that's fine.
Okay. You got to do
So
one,
it-
I'll get to do this one. So we all pick our poison. So I'll reach out tomorrow, Dennis, because I can't be this week, but next week we'll try to find some time for me to come here early and get with you, and we'll go through these in the afternoon, and just work our way through each one of the projects, which options it was, and kind of narrow them down, okay? And we can do that together.
Fantastic, I
Does that
appreciate
work?
it.
Clarify real quick though what you're saying. If we had a decision right now though, they could start.
Because we could, the next step is to grade these, right,
Yeah.
to grade the RFPs, and then ultimately present the board with what those gradings are, and then I'm assuming with Ms. Little making a suggestion. But yes, we could start that process literally as soon as tomorrow morning. Unfortunately, again, it's too much information, but it's compared apples. You're comparing so many different things here, so, yes.
Okay.
The problem is, we could make a decision. I want to make the right decision. And that's just too much. You know, if you brought one project, we'd have decided on one project and we had to choose. We're talking more than one project here.
Multiple options.
And this is big projects with multiple options, and a lot of the stuff you're talking about, I'm gonna have to ask Commissioner Bennett some questions on it, but I can't do that, we're in a meeting, because I don't understand some of the language. I know you know, because that's what y'all do.
Yes, sir. And we've got, like I said, we're reaching to outside entities as well to get as much information to make the best decision we can
I think
make.
it would be better for Baker County if y'all work this out and then bring it back to us, and we'll make the ultimate decision, but with more simplification than what we're hearing tonight.
Yes, sir.
So a timeline on this would be what?
I'm going to get together with him next week. Now, it'd come back to the board potentially the week of July 2nd.
Well, we're not. Do we have a meeting
I was
then?
going to say,
Yes.
Yes, they
We
decided
do-
to go
we
ahead
do
and
have
have
a
a July
recess
2nd
meeting
meeting.
That's-
I'm not sure I can be here. I got to check to see when I'm scheduled to be out of town. But
If
I
you
can
could
have everything-
communicate kind of your preferences to Miss Little, then she
Yeah, I
present.
can, what we can do is we'll put together a recommendation document. Here's the things, here's option 1, 2, here's the differences 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Here's the recommendations and why. And so we can put that together and have that to come back to the board, and if it's where I could be here, I will, but it's not
If not,
likely
you
I'll
could
be.
present your recommendations to Ms. Sarah, she can share them with the board at that time.
Right, Dennis Rodman too, okay?
And I'll make my schedule fit that of the board's.
And-
Would
and I-
that be a workshop on the 4th then, or the?
No, just
No,
a
board
county-
meeting.
Just
Just
a board meeting, we just present
so we
there,
won't
and
have
Then we can
work
decide.
through it.
Okay.
And we'll try to do that ahead of time, so whatever we're recommending can be sent to the board for you to have, and have a
Right.
chance to look at it beforehand. So that's why I say I will plan to do it next week, because it needs to be next week.
We'll make it
Okay?
happen.
And so I'll reach out to you tomorrow. If you haven't heard from me, please text me, and I'll get my secretary to reach out to you, okay?
Okay.
If there's no other questions, I'll give up the time. You still got time.
You
before
want,
the
I got
public
2
hearing.
minutes. Get out of here. Appreciate you, Dan.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
We're gonna go in recess. We'll call our Baker County Board of County Commissioners meeting back to order. And we are going to go into our public hearing section of our meeting. Tonight, I think everything is a first reading, if I'm correct. So there will be no decisions made tonight. It's basically for everyone to learn what's going on and any input from the community. And then our next meeting will actually be when we make a decision, yay or nay. You're on board?
All right. Good evening, everyone. Like you said, tonight is first reading, so we'll make this as quick and painless as possible. Okay, the first application that we have for you guys this evening, it is actually for two parcels. What we are looking at here is the parcel in blue that you see highlighted, and it's also this square parcel here as well. So it encompasses both parcels. So total, we are looking at 8.95 acres. The large parcel being 7.95 acres, and the square in the middle there being a 1 acre parcel. Currently, they have a land use as Ag B with a zoning of agriculture 7.5. So that square in the middle is a family lot that was given out of the larger portion. So it would be the intention of the property owner to expand that 1 acre family lot. So it was given as 1 acre. There is a mobile home that sits there currently. It's their intention to actually build a site-built home a little further back and then remove that mobile home. So they want to have bigger than 1 acre. But the property owner does have another child that they may want to give a family lot to in the future. So that is why we see the request here from Ag 7.5 to Ag 5, so that if she were to extend one child's family lot, she would still have the leeway, the flexibility in the future to give a third child a family lot. So what you would be looking at with the whole piece, so this here was a family lot as well that was given to one child. Long-term intention would to essentially split this here, and you would have 3 larger family lot tracts for the 3 children, and then mom's parcel would be this piece up here. So that would be the long-term intention. If mom gives more acreage to the current family lot that you see here, anything more than 0.5 of an acre would she would not be able to give any additional family lots in the future. So just planning ahead. You'll see here everything that surrounds the property has the agriculture B land use and the Ag 7.5 zoning. Ag 7.5 and Ag 5 are within the same land use district, so there would not be a land use change associated. Again, the request is from Ag 7.5 to Ag 5. That would result in some similar uses, similar lot requirements. There would be a change in density, but it would be minimal. The parcel as it is now, both parcels are currently in compliance. It is just estate planning. Staff recommends approval. LPA recommended approval as well.
Any questions or comments from anyone on the board?
I do have one question.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed there's a driveway. I'm not sure if it's just the graphic. Do they all have legal access?
They do, and that's actually one of the proposed changes. The way the legal description for that 1 acre parcel was written, the easement was attached to that parcel, so it's part of the legal description for that parcel.
The easement for that parcel?
Yes,
Right.
yes. So when the surveying is done to expand that and
to look at a potential parcel in the future in the center, that easement would be rewritten from the way that it is to a new easement to make sure that everyone continues to have access. But everyone does have legal access the way it is written right now, but it's not necessarily the cleanest version of access.
Well, the reason I ask, and I'm fine with that, and of course I don't have any objections, so I'm just trying to understand because
Yeah, you can
now,
see kind of the way
on
the
this,
parcel.
on this parcel, they have legal access on their own property.
Yes.
But everything here is access from a private road anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I was asking, do they have legal access out or just a prescribed easement that's been there for so many years?
They do. So there is
Okay.
an easement down to here.
Okay.
And that stops along there, and then there is a secondary easement that you see along there.
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Bennett, because you brought up the driveway, it also caught my attention, and as long as all the families live in there, it's probably not a problem. But I'll tell you that when those properties ultimately get sold, I am running into this problem down in Putnam County. I feel like almost on a weekly basis, where because that driveway is not within the legal easement, somebody gets mad later and says that you're driving on my property, and then they put gates up and things like that. And
I've experienced it firsthand on a piece of
becomes a
property I
problem.
purchased, and it becomes a problem. That's why I'm asking. I just need to make sure that everybody has legal access, because while you can have you can have the legal access in a different location where the road is.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, everybody needs to know exactly where it is, because if that person blocks that road off, there's nothing you can do except go in and put your own road separate to it. And that's why I asked the question, making sure that at some point down the road somebody wants to build on it or whatever, they can accomplish what they're trying to do with getting the financing or whatever they need.
Yes,
I think the GIS map was a little off on that too.
It might be.
Yeah.
They are, but that road actually comes in at an angle. It's not even with the property line, even if you look at the top property line.
Mm-hmm. And that is honestly a very common thing where the driveway doesn't actually sit where the legal access is.
But if they're doing the work to kind of resolve legal issues now.
Right. It is something that will be addressed.
Because then 20 years
when
from
the
now,
changes
then
happen.
there's trees in the legal, and it becomes much harder to clear it out and actually have a road or have a driveway.
Absolutely.
Any other questions from any of the commissioners? Any questions on this item or response from anyone in the public? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item.
All right, the next item we have here is for ordinance number 2025-18, a rezoning with a request from Agriculture 7.5 to Agriculture 5. This parcel is owned by Miss Virginia Higginbotham. It is on Hamp Register Road. It is towards the 127 end of Hamp Register. So where the first bridge is on Hamp Register coming from 127, that is in this area here. So currently the parcel is 13.8 acres with a land use of Ag A, zoning of Ag 7.5. Parcel's currently compliant with the Ag 7.5 zoning. However, the applicant intends to give her daughter a portion of the property to reside on. This parcel is not the homestead property of the property owner, so the family lot provision would not apply since it is not her homestead. So she would plan on deeding her the property as a portion of her inheritance. And with that, it has to meet current zoning standards. So if she were to go that route now and deed the daughter 7.5 acres, the acreage that she has left would not be conforming. So by going to Ag 5, she could deed her 5 acres, and the acreage that she still has would be conforming for future use.
But LaDonna, doesn't that happen no matter what? Because it's only, you're saying if she was at Ag 5, she'd have enough.
Right, because she's under 15 acres, so the Ag 7.5, she would be just over an acre shy of that now. So there is currently a mobile home on this property. The daughter will be deeded 5 acres of vacant land, and the property owner will keep the mobile home and the rest of the acreage. So you can see here, most everything around the parcel is agriculture B. There is a little bit of ag A in the one corner there. Most everything around it is ag 7.5. I do have the FEMA flood map there so that you can see a pretty good portion of this property does lie within the flood zone. Again, like I said, the bridge that is on the 127 side of Hamp Register is, kind of splits this parcel. So when it is time to go through the building permit process, we'll have to look at elevation certificates and that type of thing to make sure that all of those bases are covered and they're not building within the flood zone. So again, request from Act 7.5 to 5. Currently in compliance, just kind of getting ready for future use. I did zoom out a little on this aerial photo here so that you can see kind of in relation to 127 there, where you're looking at this parcel. It is almost in the middle from 127 to Turner Cemetery. It's almost exactly in the middle there. So staff recommends approval. LPA recommended approval as well. If you have any questions.
Any questions for anyone on the board? The only question I have is basically the same one Commissioner Bennett had. We don't have a breakdown where the 5 acres is going to be, so we need to make sure that there's some type of easement. I hate to give 5 acres of land and no easement to the property. I know it's not a problem with family lot provision, but it would be a problem if it was ever sold.
Right. From the talks with the property owner, it should have direct access to Hamp Register Road, okay. So that should not be an issue, but we will make sure that.
I just want to make sure that we get a piece of property that's landlocked and
absolutely.
You have no access.
Yeah.
How big is the smaller piece of property?
So the smaller piece is just under 5 acres.
Okay, as long as it's 5, then.
Right.
So otherwise, you'd end up with a non-conforming lot, no matter what.
Right.
Okay. Any questions or comments from anyone in the public? Okay, we'll move on to the next item.
Okay, so the next application we have is for ordinance number 2025-19, a rezoning with a request of agriculture 7.5 to agriculture 5. I promise that's not the only thing I talk about every day. It's just seems here lately that is definitely the trend for most of the area or most of the county. So this specific parcel is located on County Road 125 South. It is 6.25 acres with a land use of Ag B and a zoning of Ag 7.5. So this parcel was created in 1996. It's currently vacant and would be considered non-conforming. It has been 6.25 acres since its creation in 96. So the proposed rezoning would bring the parcel into compliance and allow it to become a buildable lot. This is the product of some family land being subdivided without the family lot process and without meeting those minimum zoning standards. The property was split from property that was to the north and to the south of it, and unfortunately those other tracts were larger slivers and they did meet that zoning requirement where this one did not. So you'll see here 125 is kind of the dividing line from the agricultural property to the residential property. You'll see everything on one side of 125 is agriculture zone B, while the other side is very low density residential. And then the same with the zoning. Everything on one side is Ag 7.5. The other side is RCMH 2.5. You'll see we added the flood zone map there. It does not specifically or directly touch this parcel, but it is pretty close, so we just wanted to show that just for informational purposes. Again, the proposed rezoning would bring the parcel into compliance and allow it to be a buildable lot. This property has stayed within the same family. It has changed hands through family members, but it is within the same family as when it was divided in '96. So staff recommends approval and LPA recommended approval as well.
Okay. Any questions or comments from anyone?
Looking at this, is there a structure?
There is.
Right on the line?
There is. It's an old. It was a home at one point, but when the property was subdivided, the entitlements of that home were relocated to the other parcel. So it was treated as a replacement.
But you still have to deal with setbacks. So when it was subdivided, it shouldn't have been there because of the setback requirements for the zoning
So
classification.
and from this area, from the survey that we have, that building does meet the setbacks. It looks like on this aerial, it's very close.
Looks like it's on the middle of the line.
It does to me too.
Based on the survey, it does meet. Did I
Like,
put
what
it
are
in here?
setbacks for Ag 7.5?
So for structures that are not dwellings, it's just 3 foot on the sides. So,
On ag?
yeah.
So is that dwelling or is that?
So,
If it's the house I'm thinking of, it's not going to
It's
be
not
lived.
yeah, so
dwelling.
at one,
it was
at
the
one
old Harris
point,
house.
at
Yes.
one point, it was
Yes.
considered a dwelling. It was taken off the tax roll, years and years ago, and the entitlements for that house are on the neighboring parcel. They do,
Is
just
that
from
the house
talking
that's
with the
to
property
north?
owner, they intend to leave it there and use it for like storage.
Come, don't try to tear it down.
Right.
It's a treasure.
But we did talk about all of those replacement options and all of that, and
This in a nutshell, in a nutshell, where you got to it, all this is making an already existing lot where they can where they can
Right.
build on.
Right.
End of the day, that's all we're doing here.
Yes.
Not creating a lot, not changing a lot. All we're doing is change it so they
Right.
can actually go build on
Which
it.
oddly
Right.
enough was why we created Ag 5. is
Yes.
because
For these-
too many of
for
these
this
lots
type of
came and
parcel,
people would come in
absolutely.
to get a building permit,
So
they couldn't
it's-
get a building permit.
And at the end of the day, all we're doing is making it where they can build on it.
absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? Hearing none, we'll move on.
Okay. So the next two agenda items that we have are companion items. So if it's okay with you, I'll present them together.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have ordinance number 2025-20, a rezoning with a request from Agriculture 10 to Agriculture 7.5, with a companion small-scale land use amendment of ordinance number 2025-25, Agriculture A to Agriculture B. So, Ag A is generally anything that is 20 acres or larger, so those Ag 10, Ag 20, that's where you see that land use of Ag A. Ag B is generally anything under 10 acres, so that 7.5 acre zoning and that 5 acre zoning is where we see those. So that's why you're seeing the companion applications. So this parcel is located off of Turner Cemetery Road. It is 11.82 acres with the land use of Ag A and zoning of Ag 10. So the property owners, they're currently in compliance with standards now. They have a site-built home on this parcel. However, they do have 2 children, and they would like to give both of their children family lots in the back portion of this property, but they would like to give them at least 2 acres so that each child has a 2-acre parcel in the back. So our family lot provision describes the lots created as 2 acres or more. So it is You are able to give more than 2 acres if you would like, just a 1 acre minimum. So what that would look like, the back portion here, so kind of the back 4 acres would be cut off and then split in half. So you would have 2 acre family lots that were alongside each other that encompass the back 4 acres of the property. With the current zoning of Ag 10, if they gave the first child a 2 acre family lot, it would put their acreage under 10 acres and they would not be able to give the second child. At the time of issuance, your lot has to be conforming. So that's why we're here. They could, right now, if they wanted to, give each child a 1 acre family lot, but it is their intention to give their children 2 acres. And they would also, while going through the process, want to ensure that their parcel remains conforming with the acreage requirements. While our county would recognize their lot if they gave a family lot and went under that 10 acres, we have seen some cases where financing, they ran into some issues. So the property owners want to make sure that their parcel stays within that acreage requirement even after giving their family lots, just so that it protects them in the future with any financing.
They would also have to have an access easement for both of those lots.
So they will whenever those family lots are surveyed and populated. When we go through the family lot process, that's something that we have started doing, is making sure that they have legal access. So you can look at the land use and zoning maps here. This right here, so this yellow line that comes through here, that is where Turner Cemetery comes out to 125. This is 125 here. So this is Hall Roden that comes across here, and then just to the south is where a Hamp Register would intersect. You'll have J.D. Smith Trail, and then just south of that you'll have where Hamp Register intersects, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're looking at. You'll see the immediate neighbors to this property have the Agriculture Zone A and Ag 10, but you'll see there's several pockets that have the Ag 7-5 zoning. The tracks here that are along Turner Cemetery, none of them have been rezoned and subdivided in the recent past. There is one similar lot up here along the 127 side. They went through a similar process a couple years back to be able to.
125 or 127?
Did I say 127? I'm sorry. The 125 side. They did go through a process a couple years ago to be able to split that parcel. So currently in compliance, they're just wanting to be able to give their family, their immediate family members, some larger tracts. Staff recommended approval. LPA recommended approval as well. However, we have had in the last week, we have had several, and I say several, 5 to be exact, 5 letters of opposition from immediate family members. I'm sorry, immediate neighbors.
Oh,
I
okay, that makes
apologize.
sense. I'm like, wow, that sounds like my family.
When you get in the middle of that,
It's a rough Christmas.
That would be, wouldn't it?
And commissioners, you just have to be careful with an allegation of spot zoning because of everything that's around it.
So that is some of the conversation that LPA had. So I'll give you guys a little bit to read over these letters. We did read the a portion of the letters in their entirety during the LPA meeting.
Well, they should just be attached as part of your staff report.
Right. We had already sent this out before we got the letters.
Just for the second hearing.
Yeah, for the second one, we'll make sure they're attached. All 5 of the letters, the content is very similar. The neighboring property owners are very concerned that this may set a precedent for some of the larger tracts of property that butt up to this, that we may be setting a precedent to open a door for more rezonings of this nature.
Which is a legitimate concern, but legally precedent doesn't apply to land use decisions because the commission has to make specific findings of fact for each change in
Right.
land use. So there's case law out there that says the concept of precedent doesn't guide zoning and land use decisions.
Understood. LPA did feel that there were enough Ag 7.5 zonings in the area to agree that this was the trend for the area and that it did meet all of their parameters. But we have this public process for a reason, and as a neighboring property owner, it's always our right to be able to make our voice heard, and that's why the process is the way it is. In talking with some of the neighboring property owners, a lot of them were unsure if they were going to be able to make it to the public meetings. So to ensure that their voice was heard in case they could not make the public meeting, we suggested them submit the letter so that it could be public record and their concerns be noted. I'm not sure if any of them were able to come tonight.
Our chair will open for public hearing.
They'll have an opportunity if they are here.
Yeah. So
Any questions or comments from anyone on the board? Are you finished?
I am.
I'm sorry.
I am.
The comment I have is legally, they could right now give family lot provisions to 2 of their family members for 1 acre each.
Right.
Wouldn't even have to come to the board.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, they're trying to do the right thing. So they want to give them 2 acres, and then they want everything to be legal.
Right.
So if they wanted, and anyone on Turner Cemetery wanted, that has family member that they want to give a lot to on their 10-acre lot, can do that.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because I
Yes.
agree with you. Can you just give a little bit more clarity on family lots?
Mm-hmm.
If they set up and grant a family lot provision, 1 acre, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long do they have to have that lot and things and live it? What are the requirements for a family lot to ensure it's there?
So 36 months from the issuance of the CO. They have to own and reside there for 36 months from the date of issuance of the CO. At that point, if they were to sell it or transfer ownership to someone else, it would be recognized as a conforming lot.
But from the time that if they went through and applied for a family lot
Mm-hmm.
for 1 acre, how long do they have before they have to have a residence on there and moved on it?
There's
no amount of time.
not a
Okay.
time frame. There's not.
So, but anywhere along, say they, and I'm just thinking through it, if they come in and applied for a family lot provision, it was granted for 1 acre, they wait 5 years, they still haven't moved there. During that 5-year period, they cannot sell that lot or do anything else with
They
that
could
lot.
not.
It's recognized as a family lot, and only a family can member move on it. And the family member must move on it and live in it 36 consecutive months before then it becomes a legal standing lot.
Yes.
If they moved on it, lived in it 2 years, and vacated it, that lot is no longer a conforming lot, and would it revert back to the parcel, or what happens?
So
No. The problem is, the whole concept behind this is to avoid triggering the subdivision requirements.
Right.
So, in theory, what would happen is it could trigger a code enforcement complaint where you'd have to comply with subdivision requirements, like road paving, things like that, driveway paving.
Okay.
And the property would revert back to the original owner.
No,
The
Or-
property
It
can
does.
revert.
it's automatic, it stays as a separate lot.
Right.
It
But
does.
it would no longer-
It
but
becomes
it
a
would not be
non-conforming
conforming.
Okay.
Am I correct? It'd go
Right.
back.
That's
But
correct.
it just would not, it'd be a non-conforming
it would be a
lot.
non-conforming lot, so depending on the situation, they would be looking at potentially subdivision requirements, you know, if the property had ever been split before, or they would require some sort of rezoning, land use change.
They'd have to come back.
There would be a
they'd have to come back to the
process.
board to either get approval for a non-conforming lot and get
Yes.
it changed.
Yes.
Or else they would have to do subdivisions to go through and follow the
Yes.
subdivision requirements. Or until they did one of those two processes, they would never be able to get a conforming lot to be able to pull permits to
Right.
get anything to do on it.
Right.
You're right, that's the problem.
Okay.
They couldn't pull a permit at that point.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Well, back to my original point is they could do it anyway.
They
By
could
our-
do a version of it with
by
1 acre
our-
parcels right now.
Rules and regulations that we have set forth right now, they could have two family lots
They could.
and would not even have to come to this board.
And I agree, and if, understand, if they did the 2 1-acre lots, would the parent tract remain compliant, or would it be would it be non-conforming?
It would, so by our standards, it would still be considered conforming as long as their parcel was conforming when they issued the family lot.
Right.
We would still recognize it as conforming. However, in this case, it would put them just under 10 acres.
Yeah, because it's 11.82 now, so it'd be.
Right. It would be 9.82.
So that's where the.
But they already have a residence on it, so they're not pulling a
Right.
permit to put
Right.
it.
Right.
Now, if a hurricane took out the house and they had to rebuild, then it would be a problem.
Any questions or comments from anyone in the public on this item? I'm going to direct staff to put these into the minutes.
We'll make sure they're
Okay.
make sure they're attached with the next agenda too.
All right, and move on to your next item, number 6.
All right. So we're going to change pace a little bit. This one's a little different. The next two are companions, so if it's okay with you, I'll present them together. Bear with me, my screen did die on me, so if I'm turning and you can't hear me, just holler at me. So this is for ordinance number 2025-21, a small-scale land use amendment from agricultural B to industrial, with a companion ordinance number 2025-22, a rezoning from agriculture 7.5 to light industrial. So this parcel is owned by Travis and Amy Horn. It is 7.33 acres, and it's located off of Nursery Boulevard. So if you look at the aerial here, this is where the RV park is. So it's directly across the street from the RV park. The parcel currently is considered in compliance, even though it's 7.33 acres. This was a legal lot of record prior to the zoning requirements, so we recognize it as a legal lot of record, even though it's just under that 7.5 acre threshold. So there's currently a mobile home on the property. It is the intention of the property owners to live and reside in that mobile home and then develop the front portion of the property for recreational vehicle storage. So we had lots of conversations. You'll see all of these parcels here are commercial and commercial highway. Within that commercial highway zoning category, RV sales are allowed, but RV storage is not. So you have to go up to that next industrial zoning for RV storage. Up here. There we go. So there's some photos of the driveway here. I kind of tried to get both sides. This area is paved in front of this driveway. So again, you would see to the back, there would be a mobile home, and then kind of in this area that you see here, when you pull in, there would be a parking area there for RV storage with an office to the other side. If you want to pass this down. So this was the only application that we had any DRC comments on, and the comment that we had was from our fire chief that he would like a civil review for this. With reaching out to Mr. George Harbox, it's not something that he could provide that review for us at this point because we do not have a set of civil plans for him to review. This is kind of a rough layout of what their intentions are. Of course, you know, you can imagine those types of civil plans are kind of hefty in price, and they wanted to kind of get some direction from the board and make sure that this is an idea that would even be feasible for them to move forward with before they pay for all of that civil work.
Well, if the zoning was changed,
Mm-hmm.
that site plan would have to come back for review anyway.
It would. The actual development portion would have to go through a full review. Absolutely.
I would say it's
Okay.
just that property on the north that if they're not complaining, that's the one that would
I'll look it
complain.
up on that.
Right. And they'll have to,
Okay.
you
I'll
know,
leave you- I just-
during that development process, they're going to have to meet any setbacks and anything else that comes with that.
So the zoning, the land use and zoning, when you go to a heavier industrial issue, traditionally is that you got to worry about like 2007. What happens if the market changes, nothing gets built, they sell the property to somebody else, and then somebody else wants to put a concrete plant on that, then they can
Right.
do it by right. Then you got neighbors that are really upset. So it's not necessarily what the plans are of this applicant, it's
Right.
looking at all the other permitted by right uses.
It
Right.
stays on it forever.
Right.
So what the DRC is asking for is just to get ahead of the curve to make sure that that's not a problem down the road.
So while you guys look at that, so, you know, right now,
So let me go back. Why do we want a civil site review on it? It's
so the civil review would generally come within that development application when we were actually getting ready to propose that development itself. At this point, we do not have enough to submit for a civil review.
and Christian, unless I'm mistaken, and I think you were stating this, once we approve it for that particular use, they can change whatever use at some point. If we use for storage for now, but there's no guarantee it's going to stay as that, and it could be used for anything else in that category down the road. Correct?
Right, so you're not necessarily approving a use, you're approving the zoning classification.
That's right.
Right. Just in situations like this, you know, when they have an intended use within that, we just like to, you know, share that information, and that's how we that is how we settled on industrial versus that commercial highway. If it was their intention to be doing sales or something, you would have seen a request for commercial highway like the neighboring parcels.
But is it possible, and I haven't looked at the zoning classification, to do something like commercial highway and then as a use by exception they can do storage? I mean, well, we can look it up real quick.
I
Because that's at least just a less intense than industrial.
Right. I did not read it that way, but that's definitely going to be your area of expertise more than mine.
Right. I mean, zoning just works like a pyramid from least
Right.
least intense to more intense.
And I can tell you, it's gonna give me heartburn in this area to approve industrial. Because the RV park is there, and the commercial side of it is more retail than it's gonna be industrial.
Understood.
I think it's a good place for it. I think that they have the right idea, but I'm not sure that the classification that we're trying to set forth for it is going to be approvable by me, just for the simple fact of no, their intended use, because I think their intended use is right on.
Right.
Maybe it's some way we, as Rich was saying, we could look at it a different way. Because I might be hard pressed to put an industrial site beside an RV park where people's coming to camp and enjoy their family. And I'm not saying that their intent. We all know what economy does, and they're not putting the, and they won't need to sell it. They bring a concrete plant, or God forbid something worse than that in there, and then all that dust and everything's going over to the campers and the neighbors. And right, if you don't know, there's a residential area right beside it too.
Right.
So I like it. I like the idea. I like having the storage there, but I'm just not going to. I can't. It's going to be hard for me to figure a way to support an industrial use in that area.
Understood.
I would say the residential property to the north, that's the one that I'd be concerned about.
I am. No,
I mean, your house could be right next to
yeah.
pretty
Right.
intense.
Yeah, they're certainly not compatible land uses. I will say this, I would like for us to try to find a way to help move this forward without having that open ability, because I think that this would be a very complimentary service for storage,
Yeah.
because at most RV parks, there is adjacent storage, and it makes a big difference, because a lot of people will leave their RV and put it in storage, and they have will have a program set up in partnership with them where I can call ahead and have my RV moved from there
Right,
into
right.
the site. It's really close by. It's great convenience. It lets them come back here a lot more often, and every time they come, they spend some money. So I'd like to find a way to do that, but limit what it can be done. And I like Rich's idea, if we could do it
So-
where it limits it and allows that.
So if you look at commercial highway does allow in the exceptions, it says outdoor storage areas just have to be enclosed by suitable vegetation, fences, or walls.
And I think we could get there something that would work like that. But what I've also asked is, let's not make the applicant go through. If we've been given, if staff has provided direction to them that this would be the appropriate use, if we're now making a recommendation for a different use, they should not have to go back to an entire another application fee and a whole nother process.
Right.
Because that wouldn't be fair to them, because we give them guidance. So
I
if
think-
we're going to come up with a different classification, we need to be sure, and we have to advertise for things that should be with us, and not having to make the applicant pay another entire application fee.
Yeah, I think
we
we
can allow
had.
them to amend the application based
Okay.
on kind of what direction you put forward.
Yeah, I think that's how we've handled it. We've had, I don't know if you guys remember, I guess it was about a year ago, we had the very interesting triangle piece of property that had the power line easement that went through it.
Yeah.
And we could look at a similar
Okay.
process like that. We amend the request, and that we go back through the public meeting process, but we kind of transferred those fees and things. So
Where I think the board likes the idea. I think it's a good idea, a great location for their purpose. But industrial zoning does not fit in that area. And
Right.
I think if we can work around that and get it back to the board, it'd be something we can work with.
And we haven't done this too many times, but because we're making a serious change to what the application is, we can't just go to second hearing on this. You'll have to do first
Right.
hearing again.
Right.
So-
Right.
Which I
think
With
is-
LPA as well, right? Do they need to?
I don't know that it has to go back to LPA, but the public has a right to come out making comment knowing what the actual anticipated change is going to be.
Okay.
So I think we just put it back on first hearing for our next meeting.
Okay.
Assuming the applicant's okay with it.
Right, we can definitely have a conversation tomorrow and see what that looks like. You said that would be by special use or special exception?
No, so if you look under CH, it does allow for motor vehicle, mobile home, RV sales.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times in zoning, there's not actual RV storage that's within industrial. So oftentimes in zoning, you look at the closest use that's within that category. So under the general provision, it gives you like one-stop complexes for filling stations, gas stations, motels, restaurants, or similar uses are encouraged. So similar use to RV sales, I would say, is pretty close to that. And then when you look under subsection 5 says that, 6 says that outdoor storage areas will be enclosed by suitable vegetation, fences, or walls. So when you combine those things, it does look like commercial highway is probably an appropriate zoning classification for that parcel, or for what's
So,
intended.
and I think where our direction had came from was under industrial, it does state recreational vehicles storage with site plan review.
What I'm gonna ask y'all to do is get offline and y'all
Yeah, okay.
you and Rich work through this.
We can do that.
And then
Yeah,
bring
absolutely.
it back get it back to the board, work with the applicant. And I also wanted to kind of stress another item that I'm gonna probably be looking at is some kind of a barrier where they're gonna be storing, because right behind them is a housing. So I would look at some type of barrier fence or something, privacy fence or something to protect
Yeah,
us.
I think there's a way to get
that
there.
was going to be one of my questions. Would that require a site review?
Any type of site development like
Yeah.
that requires
It-
site review.
I'm just
Either
trying to-
But,
way,
get
no
ahead
matter
of the
which
game.
category
Right,
it was
right.
in, it would
So that's
require
something we
that.
could review at that point too, but just knowing that's
Well,
what we're
typically,
doing
not every site review comes to us.
It
They will
doesn't.
review it. If you want to know, they just let her know if something's coming up with this. Then they
Gotcha.
can make sure they
Right.
coordinate it with you, but typically not
Okay.
everyone's going to come to us to
Yeah,
review.
not everyone's gonna,
But-
not everyone is required to come
Before the
through.
board.
But I think staff's hearing really
Right.
clearly that there's going to be some kind of opaque fence, whether it's a solid
Absolutely.
fence or something around it to shield that, so it.
They're
And-
gonna,
and
they're
in
gonna have to
this-
protect the RVs anyway, so I'm trying to look for something, if they're gonna protect the RVs, because most people's not gonna store their RV out in an open lot. But it just give some type of a privacy aspect to it, is what I'm
Gotcha.
asking.
Mhm. There's definitely a need. I mean, I was out there not too long ago, and that whole power line easement was full. So I mean,
It's a great idea,
yeah.
I mean, I think it's a great
Be there
idea, we
tomorrow
just need to
evening.
work it within our parameters.
Well, people got to have a place to store it. So I like the
I'd
idea.
like to see
All
us
right, we're
work
gonna
out
move-
the zoning thing.
We're gonna move
But I'd
on
like
from
to know
this
more
item,
about
and we're gonna move on.
Fire and evaluate that before we move forward with that. I'd like to have a more thorough evaluation from the fire department.
Once you get a somewhat site plan, you can get that
Yeah,
over
once
to
we
the-
actually get that development application and start looking at those civil plans, there would be a
Right.
more in-depth review from the fire chief
If
and the
I'm not- If
civil.
I'm not mistaken, there is a fire hydrant right there at the corner of going into the RV park. So there's water there.
There it is. And Glenn.
So, so it would meet within the 1,000, probably within the 1,000 feet of a
Yeah,
fire
the
hydrant.
site plan would probably just need to look
So-
at things
But it would
like,
show all that.
Yeah, can they get in and
Can,
out?
can a truck get in if an RV's on
Exactly.
fire type thing?
Okay, well, we will have those conversations tomorrow, and you'll see a amended application soon.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Anyone in the public have any other comments? Yes, sir. If you would come to the mic and say your name, state your name and all for the record and your address, please.
My name is Travis Horn. We're at the residence 9809, trying to convert it to the commercial, the industrial. I think it didn't kind of get brought up, but the direction we were doing with the industrial is because we wanted to live on the dwelling, and that was one of the zonings that allowed us to live on there and do what we were required. Like you said, it's a great idea. We've been trying to, the whole goal is to work in conjunction with the campground. And also as they expand on their other 60 acres, they talk about possibly having events and using it as overflow parking. So I know that was a very crude plan.
That's
Like
fine.
we don't have the civil plan, but we're just trying to kind of, that we're new to this. This is kind of my retirement thing, so it is important that we have the dwelling. So if there is a amendment, like, you know, some other classifications, by all means, we're just kind of going at the direction. And we do obviously have intention on fencing the area. Also, the concern with the residential neighbor, I've already spoke to him, my neighbor Rich. He said if he needed to give a written letter or come to the meeting as well, that's fine. I understand the concern as far as it's a broad zoning, and all I can say is this is my intention. This is my retirement. Like, I don't plan on going anywhere. Again, I understand the concerns.
It's a great option, great location.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had no problem
We
with
just
the
have to figure out
location.
how to get there right.
I mean, but the zoning is an issue for me.
I understand that.
Because
Again, if we can go a different direction.
You might plan on all that, but in a sad situation, something happens to you tomorrow,
Oh,
or
absolutely.
we have to look out for the future.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're elected to do. A great idea.
Right.
But we just have to look at the best process to get you to what you want.
Mr. Chair, so two things. One, in that commercial highway district, accessory uses and structures are allowed for a single-family dwelling unit, so you could live on it.
Okay, well, like I said, whatever direction y'all, to get this legal.
Just general principles. Usually when you see residential, usually you don't see residential right next to industrial. You see a transition that kind of gets you
Yeah.
there
Okay.
with the different properties that go out. So even if your neighbor's okay with it now, like hypothetically, 50 years from now, we're all gone. Somebody's got a house in that neighbor's property, and then they could have a junkyard on industrial.
I got you. I understand. Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
No, we're going to close our public hearing. Going back into our regular scheduled meeting. If you want to leave, you can leave. Not y'all. They can.
Commissioner Hartley got all excited.
You're all back out of here.
I need about 5 minutes, so we're going to take a 5-minute break. go ahead and call this meeting back into order, a regular scheduled meeting, and we on item number 5.
I'll be right along here tomorrow evening.
Approval of the grant application 911. Mr. Blanchard, are you doing this? I seen him sleeping back there.
No, I didn't go to sleep. You would have heard me snoring. Good evening, Commissioners and Chair. Normally, I come before you for 911 grants for the rural grant in the summer and fall. They also have a state grant. We generally don't apply for that. I was encouraged for some things that we have in the 911 center. Specifically, the first one I'm bringing before you is the emergency medical dispatch software and training. We're looking to expand the services we provide in 911, which is medical dispatching. There are certain medical calls where our dispatchers will take it, and they can actually assist, like CPR, give instructions. There's cue cards that go along with them for the different things that are affected. They receive not only the training, but the software and the computers to assist with that. This particular grant and the quote that we got, we actually got multiple quotes, but the one that we're applying for is the amount of $34,019.84. We were told by the state that there's a very good chance that we can get this particular grant. It's competitive with other counties as well. But again, normally it's a different cycle that we apply for, but we wanted to take advantage of this time to do that. So we're just asking for you to give me the opportunity to apply, and hopefully we will actually be successful with this grant. We plan on in the future, whether we're funded this way or using our general fund down the road in the next budget year, getting this system in place.
Questions or comments? I have one question. Legal liability. When we're on the phone telling someone how to perform CPR and something goes wrong, what kind of liability is to the county?
Well, there's always liability, and that's why the specific training is in here for that. And it is certified training to do this.
Okay.
It's not something where you would arbitrarily, and we can talk about Good Samaritan and things like that.
That's what I was going to say.
Well, that's what I want to know.
Generally, there's
what
a Good
kind of
Samaritan
liability
provision
county
in the
has.
law where when you're trying to help somebody, even if something goes wrong, the law is going to find you immune from liability.
Okay.
When we would be acting in the scope of the training, and that's why with the computer software, there are cue cards as well as the actual onto the software on the computer system, both of them, so they won't fail.
Okay.
Comment. One of the things that popped in my mind as well as with these, when we get this grant,
Yes, sir.
when it comes back, we need to make sure we have a budget amendment when it comes back to us.
Yes, sir.
So it comes to it because these grants help make sure I'm correct. It comes to us because these grants come to the county, not to the sheriff's office. Am I correct?
These specific grants, yes, sir, they do.
So this conversation I had at the last meeting about having a list of all grants and things, where
Yes.
the status and things like this, these grants that you come before us on, would like to make sure they're added to the list so we know where they're at as well, so that we can make sure that we're understanding if it's getting invoiced, if it's getting processed, if it's money's coming in, if there's outstanding money that we could have received already. I'd like to make sure that these are added to that list so we can understand where we're at.
Certainly, Commissioner, and our finance director, we've already had that conversation and are compiling that for you all.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the board?
I got one comment real
Yes.
quick. This $34,000, that is for the software itself and the training of the current staff?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Will there be new, I mean, is that part of the new training, like if they hire a new staff member?
So there's two things that happen in this. So the current staff will be trained, plus we also have trained the trainer.
Okay.
So we can then train our staff along with the software and
Okay.
everything.
All right, just making sure. Thank you.
Move to approve the application.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're moving to item number 6. Mr. Batcher, you're still up.
Okay, again, the rotation, we're not using the summer or the fall grant. This is actually called the STANK grant. It's a different funding period. And this is for what's called ICC support and the MEVO kit. The MEVO kits are basically cell phones that are able to receive 911 calls should our main 911 system fail. We already have that system inside our dispatch. So if the system went down, we could go to these cell phones, everything would switch over to that. We could take those cell phones anywhere that we have cell phone service. We currently use the Verizon cards to do that, but we're actually asking for some additional ones in this particular grant so we can put in our mobile command center, which will act as a backup PSAP should we need to do that, or should we need to deploy to another area to help them in their system that can be programmed to help in their area. The amount of the grant is $10,421.04 for that.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Blanchard? If not, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve the grant application as requested.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Go get us some money.
Thank you all. Hope you have a wonderful evening.
Item number 7, approval of task order, NFPS. Ms. Combs?
All right, it's me again. So it has been a little while, about 7 years to be exact, since the last time you had to hear about any sort of EAR submittals or comp plan amendments. But it's that time again. So at least every 7 years, every local government must determine whether the need exists to amend its comprehensive plan to reflect changes in state requirements since the last time its comprehensive plan was updated. So each local government has to notify the state land planning agency by a letter of determination or a notification of determination. So the Florida Commerce put out a schedule many years ago to tell each of those local governments when they have to make those notifications. So based on that schedule, Baker County had to make that notification by April 1st of 2025. So on March the 31st of 2025, I submitted to the Department of Economic Opportunity. I submitted a letter stating that, we have changes that need to be made. So that started our time frame to do the EAR submittal and comp plan amendment. If you do not make that notification by April 1st, you are unable to submit amendments. The same way, if you do not finish those changes within the time frame given, you are unable to submit amendments. So you'll see there in your documentation, there's a copy of the letter that I submitted to the Department of Economic Opportunity, as well as their letter. Yes.
Aren't you sending it to Florida Commerce?
Well, it goes through Florida Commerce. Yes.
Because I didn't think DEO existed anymore. DEO changed names. They're now Florida Commerce.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
They used to be DCA before that. Like every
Yeah.
couple of years they changed the name.
Whichever acronym they use now.
So they're now Florida Commerce.
So now Florida Commerce. So you'll see their response letter. So there's our submittal letter with that notification, and then their response letter that acknowledges our submittal, and it gives us some time frames there. So the last time this was done, the cycle started in 2018. The county worked with Miss Susan Frazier to do those updates. It was finished by the beginning of 2020. So it was just under a 2-year time frame. The total cost for that was about $250,000 at that point. So we have spoken to through some of our existing contracts, and
I don't think we paid her that much to do that. So she was our interim planning director.
Yes.
So we were paying her for a lot of those things. Your amendments were just a small piece of that.
That was a portion of it. Yes.
I don't want our citizens to think that we paid someone $250,000 to do your updates.
There were other duties in that as well. Yes. So we reached out to the to some of those contracts that we already have to see who could maybe help us through this process. After talking with them, we as staff felt that North Florida Professional Services they were kind of the best fit to encompass everything that we are looking to do. So through this process, it is only required that we make the statutory changes. But as we know, in the last 7 years, our county has changed quite a bit, and there is some additional work that needs to be done in our comp plan. Just to give you a couple examples, solar facilities aren't even discussed really in the comp plan, and we have 5 now. Agritourism is a coming item, and we feel like we need to address that. So it's going to be our intention to do all of the ear work and then actually work on the rest of the comp plan as well. So the task work order that you guys have would be the first phase that we would be looking at. We wanted to kind of tackle this project in a phased manner. So the first phase that you see would be encompassed during this budget cycle. So this is the work that would be done immediately in the next couple of months.
So it's in current fiscal year, not budget cycle, in current fiscal year.
Yes, it would be this first task order would be in the
current fiscal year. Okay.
Yes. And the funds requested for this task work order we have in current budget. We have those funds already. So there's some grant funding that's available for these types of projects. It would be our intention to apply for some of those. The one specifically that we're looking at is up to $25,000. That doesn't mean we would get the entirety of that, and that would be used towards potentially the second and third phase of this comp plan update. We would look at, if we received grant funding, we'd look at 3 phases. This first phase for current fiscal year, this budget cycle. Then we would look at what was encompassed with the grant funding. And then a third phase for anything that was not encompassed in that grant funding. If we did not receive any grant funding, you would see just one secondary phase that would be funded by next year's budget, this upcoming budget cycle, and that would be for the next fiscal year. So I have an example of what the second phase would look like without any sort of grant assistance. And we would be looking at about $110,000 for next year's budget cycle. So $25,000 out of this budget cycle, potentially $110 for next cycle. If that grant funding comes in, that would be different. But we want you guys to have the full picture, knowing that this is only what we're asking for tonight is only phase 1. We want you guys to know there are additional phases.
One of the things you're going to have to be very careful of with grant funding, if you receive a grant but you've already executed a contract, you may not get to.
That's another reason that we talked about phasing. And if we want the phase that is potentially grant funded to only encompass that, not touch anything else, so that we have that covered.
So essentially right now you're asking them to move forward with the $25,000 for the phase 1?
Yes.
You're going to budget for phase 2 for everything, but we may get a grant that would cut it down.
Yes.
What are you looking at doing in phase 2?
Sorry?
What are you looking to do in phase 2?
So this would be the rest of. This would kind of be worst case scenario.
Because I would tell you, we need to do the statutory revisions. So
Yes, and those will come first.
I would say let's get them to do those because that's required by statute. And
Then
North-
we can decide to do this.
Yeah, North Florida Professional Services is also working in Bradford County, so I'm working with them. They do good work. They're very prompt, attentive, things like that. But since the last set of years, and fortunately, because I travel around and unfortunately I'm late, there's a lot of these things that are the same everywhere you go. So the major things that we have to deal with are this legislature changed the definition of what threshold you have to get to if you want to establish a community development district. It used to be 1,000, is it homes? No, 1,000 acres. Now it's 2,500 acres. That's one statutory change we got to make. There was the change for the comprehensive plan for a small scale amendment. Up until a year ago, when we talked about small scale amendment, we were talking anything under 10 acres. They changed it, so now a small scale amendment's anything under 50 acres. So that would be something we have to change in our code. The adoption cycle, we don't really adhere to that. Generally, when you submit small scale amendments, it's on a 6-month cycle in June and December. The legislature did away with that. And then the last one is we don't have a definition of electrical substation. It kind of goes along with the solar and floating solar systems, or solar facilities. So we'll have to actually put definitions into our code for electrical substations. But we handle those 4 things, and by statute, we're in compliance. Now, all the other stuff that LaDonna's talking about is very valid, but you and I can just start to methodically work through some of those.
Right. And this, all of the statutory stuff would be on the front side of things. And we do have a representative from North Florida Professional Services if there are questions that he may be more equipped to answer than myself. He goes through this process a lot more often than I do.
So you want to come up?
You got your scope defined for each step, each phase?
Yes. So both of those it's broken down in that task order. The scope is broken down.
How likely are we to incur any of those $140 an hour services?
So those would only be if y'all requested something that's not in the scope in writing. So we're not going to do anything that's not within the scope or charge you anything other than what the $25,000, unless it's in writing from the county saying we want you to do X, Y, and Z, and the additional charge of $140 an hour. Or if the county wanted to, we could say if they wanted something else done, they could say how much to do X, Y, and Z. We can put that in a whole new task work order, come up with a price list. It's just a caveat that if you do want additional services and want them, it's $140 an hour. Otherwise, this is the scope, this is the price, it's fixed. And so no matter how much time we take or how much work or whether we go over budget or not, you're stuck at $25,000, that's it. And then if there was additional things, there's many ways we can look at that. And that's why we phased it, because we didn't want to do so much in this first task work order that when we go to apply for the grant, then we're left with like, okay, well, what do y'all want the money for? Because we didn't want it to be looking like we were trying to retroactive these funds, because we're not. We're trying to do work, and while we're doing this work, seek this grant, and then when we get done with this work, hopefully we'll know what's going to happen with that grant, and know how to proceed with the second or third phases of this project.
Any questions?
I like the way you're going about it, trying to get more on the grant side.
Yeah, we try to get all the funding we